To the December 6th meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. I'll try and adjust this, not used to this setup. So if you can't hear me, just yell loudly and I'll try to move the microphone. We have a pretty busy agenda. I'll just remind everybody that this meeting's being recorded. First item is a public hearing for the zoning dimensional regulations for projects in the M1 district, renovation of the public library at 55 West Main Street. We have a de minimis change to the approved site plan for 54 Otis Street, a public hearing for special permit 2022-3 Stone Incorporated at 80 Turnpike Road, a preliminary subdivision plan for 48 Flanders Road, a continuation of the public hearing for 180-182 Turnpike Road, continuation of the public hearing for 190-212 Oak Street, a continuation of the public hearing for earth moving permit 25 Gleason Street, and a public hearing to modify the commercial component of special permit TOV 2014-1 for Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street. We'll try and move things along, but I will make an effort to hear everybody who wants to speak. First item is zoning dimensional regulations for projects in the M1 district, renovation of the public library. This is a public hearing, so I have to read the legal notice into the record first, and then we can start. Legal notice of the Town of Westborough office, notice of public hearing. The Town of Westborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, December 6, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. in the Great Hall of the Forbes Municipal Building, 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, on the following article to appear on the warrant for the December 22 Westborough Special Town Meeting to see if the town will vote to establish the dimensional regulations as required under Article 2, District Regulations, Section 2600, Dimensional Schedule, subsection 2630, Building in M1 District M1 of the Westborough zoning bylaws for the town-owned property located at 55 West Main Street, also identified on Assessor's Map 20, Parcel 322 for the property containing the existing Westborough Public Library structure shown on the plan entitled Westborough Public Library Site Dimensional Zoning Regulation SKWPL-1 REV.2 dated October 2022 and on file with the town clerk. The purpose of establishing these regulations is to create a building and site work envelope to allow the renovation of the Westborough Public Library. The dimensional regulations for the site, including any required future construction, are proposed as follows. Minimum front yard 0, minimum side yard 0, minimum rear yard 0 with a minimum rear yard building setback of 10 feet. Maximum structure height 50 feet, or take any action thereon. A copy of the entire proposed zoning amendments are on file with and can be viewed at the offices of the Westborough Planning Board and Westborough Town Clerk during their business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the proposed amendments should attend the public hearing indicated above. That's signed the Westborough Planning Board, and that was in the Telegram and Gazette on November 19th and November 26th. And just so everybody knows, the reference to the Great Hall at Forbes, we had to move it here because of equipment difficulties over there, but I think it's still posted over there that the public has noticed that we've moved the meeting to this location. So that being said, Jim, do you want to preface this, or should we go straight to the library building committee?
Just very briefly, the article has not changed. This is the same dimensional regulations and plan as brought to town meeting in October. The applicant will make a presentation on the article.
Okay. Just before we start, it is a public hearing, and I will get to everyone's comments, but if you're commenting on, if your comment includes complaining why we're having another town meeting, or talking about the finances of the project, or anything not related to zoning, I will have a very short leash, okay? So please try to keep your comments when they come to the matter at hand, which is the zoning and setback and so forth. Okay. Who is here for the library and wants to do the presentation? Okay, please. Just name and address for the record. And
Eric Moore with Lamro Pagano Architects from Worcester. I'll just make this really brief. The The proposed project and the plan that you're seeing here is the lower level plan of the library. On the left is the 1908 portion of the library, and on the right is the proposed addition. In red, what you're seeing is the outline, the perimeter outline of the existing 1980s addition. At our first hearing, there was discussion about making a 10-foot setback from the property line along the north here, and that was agreed to, and we are in the process of making some revisions. We've eliminated since this box out here, and moved the exterior wall over slightly to maintain that minimum 10-foot setback. But this is essentially the same plan. The setbacks are as was proposed at the earlier planning board hearing. So nothing really has changed with that respect. And we brought this just to illustrate kind of the existing and proposed footprints. That's really all I have to that effect.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Yes. Looking at this plan, quite frankly, I was unaware that the building was going to be much closer to the church. And I don't remember our board having any discussion about that. We did focus on the setback on the rear to the Parkman property, but I don't think we ever had any discussion about the change in the setback to the church. How close to the property line is the setback next to the church?
So on the church elevation, which is this one here, at this point we're about 9 feet to the property line, and we're not substantially different than the existing building, which is in red here. But as you can see, we've angled the building slightly here compared to the 1980 addition. 1980 addition runs straight along here and then jogs back. We're proposing to infill this area here with the elevator and the main stair. So at this point, it's I think at its closest point, it's approximately 6 feet from the property line. That has not changed. That has been the plan for some time now.
So at the
No, but what
closest point, it's moving 3 feet closer?
At this point, it's 3 feet closer to the closest point.
Just
of the
that point
existing
B
building,
on
which
the-
is here.
That point B there, that top
About 9
corner?
feet. Yeah.
All right.
I know my concern is I don't think they're, as I said, I don't, quite frankly, I don't think as a board we ever had any discussion about that particular lot line. And my concern is whether the next door neighbor was fully aware of this when we originally voted on the zoning change. I know the notice in the paper was correct, however, there are circumstances, I know that we'd heard from the rear neighbor, and that was the reason we discussed that, but the fact that we had no discussion about that particular lot line and that we never heard from the neighbor one way or another, I don't know whether they actually were aware of that when the,
Eric, can you talk, I know you had meetings with the church about using
the
the
parking lot.
parking for staging. Can you talk a little bit about whether they were given, whether there was discussion with them at all on this?
We met in July, late July of 2022 with the church trustees to discuss the project. And at that time, we had this plan, basically. This is what was illustrated on the site plan that we showed. The concerns we heard at that time were primarily along the issue of the condition of the pavement in the parking lot. I have a memo that I can refer to here. Potential for damage to that pavement and restoration of it in a, kind of a holistic way. There was a concern that the existing parking lot has no drainage from the church. The downspouts currently just empty out onto the pavement and flow overland to the, eventually finding their way out to the main street. There was concerns about potential damage to the historic structure of the church, and a request for monitoring by a structural engineer and assessment of that, not only prior to any construction, but as construction actually happened. There was concern about the pavement subbase. The material underneath that pavement was described as very poor, not a good subbase for a parking lot, and there was a desire to have that replaced. And also a need for 3 to 4 reserved spaces at all times for the church use. But we did not hear any concerns or issues with the location of the building relative to the lot line. Whether the church trustees were completely aware of that, I really can't speak to that. I mean, the drawings were out there. We really hadn't changed the design, so it had been since we really rebooted this design since the 2016 study. This has pretty much been what we've had all along. So this is what we've been showing on site plans and floor plans and at various presentations to the public.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Anything?
Yeah, I would just ask, is this the same plan that we had voted on back in, what was it, October?
Right, same plan.
Okay, same thing, okay.
Yeah, yes. This, I don't know that we brought this particular graphic to that, but the perimeter is exactly the same, yes.
Okay.
The perimeter's the same, but the red line was not in there, is that correct? It's showing the existing building.
The line was shown on the site plan, I believe. I believe we did show that on the original site plan.
All right, so Jim, just before we get to the public, this article is only going forward if the first article passes?
Correct.
Okay, just want to make that clear.
Yes, Article 1 is on the financing of the project. Article 2 is this article, establishing the zoning dimensional regulations.
So if the town votes to fund Article 1, then this would establish the parameters for the new addition?
For the building project, yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, if you could come up to the microphone, state your name and address, and we'll recognize you.
Bob Peterson, 9 Golden Court, Westborough. I am the chair of the Board of Trustees of the Congregational Church. This item did not come up at the meeting in July. We were not aware of it. I only became aware of it this weekend when I was discussing the whole library project with the church's attorney. It suddenly occurred to me that this was different. I would like to point out that the library project team never pointed out to the church that there would be a difference here from the distance from the existing building to the church lot line with the new building. That was never pointed out. I will say that we never asked the question. It was never really discussed. I have no idea if this is the same drawing that was shown in that meeting, but I did send an email to Mr. Silverberg, and Mr. Robbins and Ms. Williams, and I assume that the planning board has seen that email. And based upon the wording that is provided by our attorney, the Congregational Church would propose, ask that the warrant be amended so that the proposed addition maintain a minimum side yard building setback from the property line of the Congregational Church so that it is no less than the setback of the existing structure. So again, instead of having it 3 feet closer, the church is requesting that it be no closer than the existing building. And we would like an amendment to the warrant that will be presented to the town meeting on December 10th. And
Okay,
again, I
so are you-
would like to stress that.
Are you asking us to, you're
I'm
just
asking
informing
you
us
to
of the
amend this.
amendment?
Yes.
So you're going to request, I'm just trying to get this straight. Your intention is to request an amendment on town meeting floor?
I would prefer that that the planning board vote on the amendment here, if that's possible, before it gets to town meeting floor.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I'm not sure of the policies and procedures in the public arena, so that may or may not be allowable.
Right, I think Jim would have to give us some advice on whether that's allowable, but I'll let you tell us.
So you cannot amend the article. The article is the article. However, you can make a recommendation to the town meeting voters that the article be amended.
Well, that's all we're voting on now is a recommendation, whether to pass the article or not, so that gives us a third article that we could recommend it be passed with an amendment. Okay.
I would like to state for the planning board that the Board of Trustees is disappointed that the library project team has not been more forthcoming with this type of information, so we were aware of it. It seems like we sort of have to ferret information out. So that is from the Board of Trustees, and again, may have nothing to do with the warrant and what the planning board can do.
Anybody have questions?
Questions for me?
So,
My question is, if Article 1 is passed and Article 2 is voted down, then what's the process after that?
They'll have to come up with some dimensional regulations. So if Article 2, as it's written in the warrant, is voted down, but you propose an amendment, first they'll consider the amendment before they go to the main motion, which is the article as written.
Bob, can I just ask why you're opposed to it moving closer? I mean, it sounds like it's moving 3 feet closer, so I'm not a member.
It's pretty close as it is.
Yeah, no, I know it is.
And to be honest, the church has multiple issues with this project that have been expressed to the Board of Trustees. It is just moving closer, and we just prefer it not to be closer. And to be honest, it would have been preferential had the library project team been more forthcoming and let us know about it. It's a little bit frustrating to find out, and again, it was not mentioned at the previous meeting because we didn't realize it. It's a little bit frustrating to find out about these things in arrears.
Okay. Did you have a question, John?
I had the same question, but if I could press you a little bit more, what is the concern with it being closer? I don't think just being closer is really a concern. I mean, is it a safety issue? Is it you're worried about parking in that area? What's the actual reason you don't want it closer?
It is, the current building is fairly close to the church parking lot right now. We would prefer it not be closer. It's that simple.
I understand that. I'm just wondering if there's an actual concrete reason as to your concern with it being closer.
We
If it
have
was
had
if
some-
it was 2
we-
feet closer, or sorry, not 2 feet. If it was It's 6 feet away now, so if it was 5 feet away, or if it was 7 feet away, like, would that change how you feel about it? I'm just trying to get to the root cause of your concern
We've
and
had
how we can
some-
address it.
let's say, some issues with the plowing in the past, because the emergency exit from the current building is very close. It's, the individual who spoke before said it's probably about 9 feet. Where when the parking lot gets plowed, we've been told by the fire department that you can't plow it too close. Now, the DPW does do the plowing for us now, and it's not an issue, but again, it's the same issue. It's how close it is and plowing and that type of thing. Do I think it's a big safety issue? No, I don't. But again, probably the biggest issue is the fact that the library project team was not considerate enough to make us aware of that, and to give us an opportunity to say, can you do something different? Or we would express our feelings about it.
So, does the DPW plow your driveway because you allow library parking? Is that the?
Yes, the long answer to that is the church and the town have a lease agreement. It's a 10-year agreement. The benefit for the town is that library parking is allowed in there. The benefit for the church is that if a library patron is injured in the church parking lot, the town liability takes precedence over the church liability. The DPW will plow our parking lot and sand it and remove the sand in the spring. And there is a monetary component of that. The town will pay the church $1 per year. So the lease is a 10-year lease, but it may be voided within 30 days' notice by either party.
So it sounds like at this moment you have a pretty pleasant relationship with the library based on the agreements that you already have in place. I just don't understand that 3 feet is a major issue.
I am bringing this forward on advice of our council.
All right, so, are there any other public comments? Bob, thank you for your time. I appreciate the comments. If you could just name and address first, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mary Johnston, 5 Sandra Pond Road. I am the chair of the Library Board of Trustees, and I'm also on the building committee. I just wanted to clarify, so I think Mr. Peterson and the Library Building Committee have differences of opinion on that. This slide has similar slide, not this very particular one. The one that was before this had a different color of red line, but the existing building has always been shown in our presentations. We've had 6 public forums in addition to our meetings with the church. The representatives of the church were at several of those public meetings. In addition to that, Mr. Peterson has attended several of our library building committees in which we've shown this drawing and we've discussed the property setbacks. So from the library building committee standpoint, we feel we've been very forthcoming in this information. It's the same information we talked about in our last meeting with you, and it hasn't changed. It's pretty clear, looking at that the library would change on that side a short amount. Thank you. Any questions from you?
Any questions?
No. Thanks.
Any other public comments?
Ed Baldwin, 25 Mount Pleasant Street. I'm a library trustee and the chair of the building committee. I actually just have a technical question. If I recall Mr. Peterson's words correctly, it was to not go beyond the existing building, which would mean we couldn't go closer than the red line to the church. And I think that would be considerably more stringent than the usual 10-foot setbacks. So I just wonder if that's how the planning board would interpret that.
Well, there's no usual setbacks.
Okay.
That's the point of this article, is to determine the setbacks, right? I mean, municipal land does not have any set side yard setbacks. And, when a building project comes forth, we determine the setbacks at that
Okay,
time.
thank you.
Any discussion, any further questions, comments?
My only question is the fact that I'm looking at this plan, and I've been told more or less closer than I'm not given any exact figures as to how close we're really talking about.
Well,
I know that we were very
yeah,
careful about.
it
the
appears
10
that
votes.
it's different depending on where you are along the
Right.
architecture, but
The
I think he
closest,
stated
as I
that the
said, he said-
closest was 6 feet,
Yeah,
which is,
more or less, but as I said, since there are no dimensions on the plan, I'm just skeptical in the fact that I don't know exactly how many feet we're talking about. So it's just something I'd like to raise. I mean, as I said, I'm a little uncomfortable with this as it is.
well, I'm sure there's a scale on this plan, but I don't really have the ability to give you a,
No, I couldn't either. That was the whole
Yeah.
problem. I looked at it, I have no idea. And the architect said more or less. And it's
Yeah,
like more or
I
less.
guess, for me, it's not a, if it's 5 feet or 6 feet, it's just a
Well, if it's
question of
2
whether,
feet, that makes a difference.
yeah. Okay, any other questions, comments? So we have 3 choices. We can motion to recommend that the town not approve the article, motion that they approve the article, or motion that they approve the article with an amendment. My feeling on it personally is that we've been at this for a long time, and if there's an amendment to be had, it should be considered by town meeting and not necessarily our job to intervene in that process. I feel like it's going to be quite a town meeting on Saturday, and I think that the town should make that decision, and I would encourage the church to bring that to the town for discussion, but I don't want to get in the way of that discussion. I'd like, in my opinion, the more discussion we have, the better.
Mark, can we have a no vote at this time? Do it that way?
A no vote on,
I mean,
well, we
not
don't-
take your vote, not a no vote, but not take a vote.
you
Is
want,
that a
you want to
possible-
make, you want to make a motion, you want to, so we have a open meeting on, posted for town meeting. We could postpone this discussion and take a vote on town meeting floor.
What
If-
new information are we gonna learn between now and then?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
And I think we've already approved this once, nothing's changed. So I'd say we just go forward with it now.
I agree. Let's vote on it.
Well, somebody's got to make a motion.
I move that the planning board recommend approval of the article as written.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I don't wanna blindside Hazel here, but was there a reason you wanna wait until Saturday? If there's a good reason, I'm fine waiting. I don't know what information we're gonna find.
I just feel that, this has come before us rather late, and I think it's a decision that I'd rather make after I see what happens with the library. I mean, as I said,
You wanna make, it's not that you wanna wait until just before the town meeting, you wanna wait until after Article 1 has been
I
decided?
think there'd be no point in voting before the article, I would think. I mean, because if they're gonna bring up an amendment, I think the appropriate thing is for the amendment to be made at town meeting.
Wouldn't it be an amendment of what we're voting on right now?
It'll be amendment on what is before
Yeah.
the board.
Would we have-
Before the town meeting.
Would we
yes.
have a chance to
Well,
vote, change our recommendation once
if-
that amendment's made?
So if there's an amendment made on town meeting floor, we could request time to discuss it internally and report a vote on, a recommendation on the amendment at that time. So
I'd prefer that.
yeah, but as of right now, I mean, there's no amendment other than they're asking us to create this amendment. And I feel a little uncomfortable rewriting the article at this point,
I
this
don't
far
think-
into it.
Yeah, legally, I don't see how, essentially, I don't see how we can rewrite the article now, because even though I know it comes under the notice that was already given, I still don't feel that there has been proper notice to the public as to the reason for the amendment. So that's what would bother me to vote on an amendment now. I think the appropriate thing is to have them make the amendment at town meeting if the library passes,
So-
and then we discuss it at that time.
So the other thing is, it sounds to me like the library and the church have been good neighbors to each other for a long time, and if there's no reason they have to build to the setback, or to the, right? Like, they could come up with an accommodation after the fact and revise that plan to satisfy the church, but this doesn't require them to do anything on the addition, it just gives them the ability to do something. I know that they've obviously been concerned with a neighbor because the residential neighbor in the rear was certainly aware of the proximity, and they worked with him to propose a 10-foot setback for the building. So I think the library building committee will try to be a good neighbor here, but there's no requirement that, that's not our decision, or, I guess my problem is it's a parking lot next door too, it's not somebody's home. So I'm a little bit unclear what the objection is to moving it 3 feet closer. That doesn't seem, again, that's not our decision though, it's really just setting the setback that would allow them to move it 3 feet closer. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to move it 3 feet closer. That decision could be made.
I mean, there's no amendment before us right now, right? They're going to propose an amendment at town meeting. Right now, the only thing before us is the article itself.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable making the recommendation as it stands.
Okay.
And then if they make an amendment, we can make a recommendation on that amendment when it comes before us.
Yeah. Well, we do have a motion and a second. So do we have any more comments on that motion and on that second? All right, I think we should vote it. All those in favor, raise your hands. That's 5-0. All those opposed, 0. Okay, that's 5-0 to recommend the article as written in the warrant. All right, thank you, guys. We appreciate it. Move on to the next.
Mr. Chairman, can you take up the A&R plan just so that I can give that to the
Oh,
recorder?
right, yeah, we do have an A&R plan on the agenda, and that is for 0 Ruggles Street. Jim, are you going to present that?
Sure.
or-
Very simply, you have a reduced copy of the plan in your package. The only change to the plan is a note, which has now changed the transfer of parcel A, which is at the end of Breen Road, to the care and custody of the Conservation Commission. On the previous plan, it was to the care and custody of the Select Board. That's the only change on the plan.
Okay, any questions?
I have a motion for you in your package.
This was purely to get some of the grant money from the state.
Correct.
How much?
I don't know exactly. I know the town manager's here somewhere. I saw her. Maybe she's not. There she is.
I think it was like 20, okay, she's,
It's $60,900 for the purchase of the property.
okay, great. We're going to put that in open space fund?
Can I ask an annoying technical question?
Go ahead, Jeff.
So Jim, it says in the notes, parcel C is to be conveyed to the Westborough Board of Selectmen.
Yes,
Is it the Select Board or the Selectmen, and does that matter?
doesn't matter.
Okay, perfect.
Good catch, though. All right, any further questions? Do we have a motion on this?
I move that the planning board approve the A&R plan for 0 Ruggles Street entitled 0 Ruggles Street and Breen Road, drawn by WDA Design Group dated 10/4/2022.
Second?
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? And that's 5-0 in favor of endorsing that plan. Next item on the agenda, we have a de minimis change to the approved site plan for 54 Otis Street. Bob, just name and title for the record.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Robert Buckley, Reaver and Bronstein. I'm here this evening to request a de minimis change to the approved site plan, which consists of adding a loading dock door at grade that would be utilized by small vehicles, not tractor trailers, et cetera. Basically, cars and small trucks, and it would be at grade. Does not change the open space. And the other change that we have on the de minimis change is that the parking numbers go from 179 to 180 to correct the plan to reflect what's going to be on the ground. We can have the engineer put it up if you'd like, but it.
I think in the interest of time, is there anyone here that needs a graphic on that?
Can you just point out where the additional parking space is and the loading dock is going to be? Or is there a
Look at your
plan?
plan on the left-hand side. The space is merely just a correction in the math to reflect the numbers.
Oh, there's not a new space, it's
No,
just,
no, yeah.
okay.
Do you want us to set up a computer to do it?
It's fine, if you can just
Okay.
tell me where on the plan it is so I can see
Okay, on
it.
the left-hand side of the plan, you can see the existing loading dock, the long driveway coming off the ring road. It's just to the right of that.
Okay.
It's clouded in a bubble.
It's where the bump out is at the rear of the building.
And the one in the dark line.
Yep.
Yeah,
So it's that de minimis.
yeah.
Any further questions from the board?
There are doors on either side of that, it's a bump out, but you said it's used for small vehicles.
Pickup trucks, box trucks, yeah.
Either side, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out. Okay.
Will Park, civil engineer with SMMA. The appendage off the west side of the building currently has 2 loading docks to the south.
Okay,
Those have 4-foot reveals, so a actual large pickup, semi-trailer can deliver to those 2 doors. This will be an at-grade door, so just an overhead roll-up door without a 4-foot dock on the north side of that appendage.
Okay.
Like Bob said, for smaller deliveries, just so that they don't have to take up the loading doors that are kind of reserved for larger vehicles.
okay.
Any further questions? All right, does somebody want to make a motion?
Here you go. All right, I move the planning board approve the de minimis change to the site plan for 54 Otis Street as shown on the plans entitled Layout and Materials Plan C-121, last reviewed 11/17/2022, and Grading and Utilities Plan C-131, last revised 11/17/2022.
Second,
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor? That is also 5-0 in favor of approving that change. Bob, while you're here, can you just give me an update on
We
the,
delivered the easements this week, so the staff has them. That's the plans and the easement text. So I suggested to Jim, after you've had a chance to review them, that we'd sit down and go over them.
okay,
The reason for the delay was we had the plan, but we had a number of lenders. We had to divide them into separate parcels, the easements themselves. To the naked eye, it'll be a continuous easement, but we had to have, for the lender approval, just separate documents.
okay. So this will be public easements around Hockomock Pond
And
And,
up behind, and to
and
the
then
ball
up-
field.
and then
I meant to the
another,
ball field parking lot.
another easement from the sewer treatment plant to the target ball fields, basically. Or not the sewer
They're
treatment
shown on the
plant?
plan. and-
Yeah,
and
okay.
It also includes the parking area for the ballpark.
Okay, great.
So when you have a chance to review that, I suggest maybe we have a working meeting to go over them and then
Sure.
deliver them to
Well,
the
you know, I'm
town.
going to keep pushing on this, so.
I know you are.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, we have a public hearing for special permit 2022-3, Stone Incorporated at 80 Turnpike Road. Once again, this is a public hearing, so I have to read the legal notice into the record. Legal notice, Town of Westborough for special permit review hearing pursuant to rules and regulations relative to special permit review under Chapter 40A, Section 9 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 2300 of the zoning bylaws of the Town of Westborough. The Westborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, December 6th, 2022 at 6:30 PM in the Forbes Municipal Building, Great Hall, second floor, meeting room, 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, on a proposal by Stone Incorporated to allow manufacturing, processing, and warehousing of inventory for a retail store selling stone, granite, marble, and other similar surfaces at an existing building at 80 Turnpike Road. Any person wishing to be heard should appear at the time and place noted above. A copy of the application and plan are available for review in the Westborough Planning Board offices at 45 West Street, that should be 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, and the Town Clerk's office at 34 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, during regular business hours, and that's signed the Westborough Planning Board. And that was in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette on November 15th and November 22nd. Jim, any comments before we turn to the applicant?
Yes, just for the board's information and for those watching at home, this is for a change in use. The use for manufacturing and/or processing requires a special permit from the planning board. There are no significant changes to the exterior of the building or to the parking lot. There's a reorganization of access for the manufacturing delivery at the rear of the building and the change to a couple of parking spaces. But the changes are so small that they don't trigger a formal site plan review. But the use itself in the Highway Business District requires a permit, a special permit from the planning board. And that's what you're doing. You're looking at the use in the special permit requirement of zoning.
Gentlemen, who, name and title,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Marshall Gould, attorney for Stone, Inc., and the president is here in the middle of the first row here, Mark Malegny. And with him also is Mike Connors from a design group that is helping him design the interior of the building. One correction I want to make from what Jim said. I think both Jim and I misunderstood at the one-stop meeting. The small change to the building to add 2 garage or bay doors actually is going to be on the side of the building, not the rear of the building.
Okay.
Other than that, Jim stated it perfectly. We learned at the one-stop meeting, obviously we knew that retail use is allowed by right at this existing building, but for the stonework to be done, it comes under the category of manufacturing, processing, and warehouse. It's not your typical manufacturing. It's not your typical warehouse. All of you, I'm sure, can imagine what's done when you're cutting stone. There is water usage. There is a byproduct of that after it's mixed with water, and this is all going to be reclaimed water. And the sludge that is left, that is called stone slurry, is going to be contained in a container as it goes through the process. And when that container gets close to being full, it is picked up by a third party and properly disposed of. So this building, you're going to see no other changes. From the front of the building, it's going to be exactly as it is now. Currently, the building on the inside, I know it's technically not part of what we're talking about, but just to let you know, the building currently has 2 floors. When you walk in from the front, that's actually the second floor. If you were to go in from the side or the rear of the building, It's 2 stories, but they're going to take out the ceiling for about 7,000 square feet of the interior, so that that will be a full-height ceiling for both floors, and that's where the processing of the stone, marble, and granite will take place. The cutting will be there. Everything is going to be done inside. We don't have to worry about dust from all the cutting being outside or vented outside. The system is self-contained. We did bring, and I offered to show Jim, if anybody from the board wants to see the system that he's going to have, it's typically what all stone cutters, marble cutters use, and it's well accepted in the industry. So really what we're here for tonight is to the extent that the building will involve manufacturing, processing, and warehousing, that's why we are here for a special permit. But as I say, it's not your typical that you would hear if manufacturing, processing, and warehouse, you'd think of a big building with a lot of manufacturing going on. This is a relatively small operation in the existing building on Route 9. So we're asking that you grant the approval of the special permit. The property, just so you'll know, is 1.476 acres. The inside of the building, I've already explained to you what's going to be done. There's going to be, as pointed out on page 2 of the application, everything's done inside. There will be no additional lights, no nuisance, hazard, or congestion caused as a result of what's going to be taking place inside the building. And that's the end of the presentation.
Okay, questions from the board?
My question would be noise. Noise,
Right, and there won't be outside noise other than typical cars going in or out and the occasional truck that will be delivering the material. But all the work is going to be done on the inside. There will be, could you describe, Mark, how the material that's on the outside rack will be brought inside?
Yes, so some
Come on up
material-
here, please,
yeah.
to the mic.
So some material will be stored outside. We use forklifts with a pincher system to be able to bring one slab in at a time. Other than that, outside, everything is contained inside the building.
now my question really was, I was thinking about the cutting and things done inside the building. That noise will not be heard outside the building.
Correct.
That's,
It's going to be within a closed system.
that's,
Is there
Closed
any
building system.
soundproofing or insulation going to be proposed? I'm just looking at Google Maps, and it looks like the closest house is about 425 feet. So is there going to be any noise from the saws or the cutting machine that could escape? You know, if it's, I don't know what the material of the wall behind on the back of that building. So if it's, thin material, is that the sound going to cut right through that and go to the neighbors?
The back of the building is cinder block right now. It should not be heard outside. Insulation could be applied inside. It wasn't intended, but we currently run an operation right now that we've been operating for 14 years. And I can tell you when we're outside the building currently, we can't hear anything inside.
Thank you.
Would the cutting operation be where the new docks or the new doors would be added on the side?
It's going to be, is it roughly half or a third of the building that's going to be the 2 stories high?
Yeah, it's roughly half. It's in, looking at the picture, it's the bottom left corner, so farthest away from Route 9 and toward the west side. The saws will be in an open space there, and then there's a finishing room that'll be down in that furthest corner, on the southwest side of it. And inside the finish room is just where hand tools and polishes are used. So there's actually an added layer of separation for part of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. My concern was that you'd be doing the cutting by the doors, and when you're bringing materials in and out, that's where the noise would escape.
The
But if-
beauty of where the changes are being made, as you're looking at the slide, the building immediately to the west, I'm not sure if it's still Dan's Jeep, but that's where Dan's
Sure.
Jeep was. So it's really closest and facing the Dan's Jeep side. The residence that I think you're referring to is going to be on the east or southeasterly side, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think those are good changes to make to help the neighbors. I guess my only other question is outdoor storage. Where do you plan on having that?
I don't, so it's, on the same corner of the building we were just discussing. There are a couple of parking spaces on the outside there currently, that we plan to set up some stone racking. And one other comment on what we were just discussing also, and the garage doors will remain closed. Other than opening a door to bring a slab in, while the process is going on, they will remain closed unless something has to go into the building.
Okay.
So there are a few parking spaces that we plan to use on the exterior of the building on the west side there, that we plan to put racking to hold the slabs.
This building and the parking around it, especially because we are reducing the square footage of the building, has far more parking than would be needed under the zoning bylaw. And really, the customers will be coming, and there's plenty of parking up front, and that's where the customers will be parking. The employees can park on the sides or in the back. So we don't really see that as an issue. So removing those few parking spaces, there are going to be 2 removed for one door. There's another parking space being removed for a door, for another door, and there's a little walkway next to it. And then for the racks, they might use another space. And your rules provide that if you're less than 6 parking spaces, you don't need to go through regular site plan review, but they are applying to the building commissioner's office for the so-called limited site plan review, because the building is basically as it is.
So if you guys aren't using the intended square footage that's there today, would it be safe to say that you don't need all the, it's on town sewer, right? So you don't need the town sewer capacity that it has today?
I don't know if it has been checked as to what the current sewer capacity is for that particular building. I do know at the one-stop meeting, there was a question asked about how much water is used where they are now for the cutting process, and he did bring those numbers along, and because he recycles, the numbers are actually pretty small. To the extent he doesn't use the entire building, he may try to do rental of some other space. Right now, it's set up with quite a few offices on the inside, because this building has had multiple uses. But clearly, the area that's going to be floor to ceiling is going to be not for typical retail. That would be for a business like his, or if there's a related use that they either decide to do themselves or to bring somebody in to assist them with the work, that's probably what they will be doing.
Now, are you renting the space? Are you leasing it? Oh, you're gonna buy it?
We're purchasing the space.
Okay.
I can also just add quickly, the front portion of the building where we aren't taking out the second floor, the intended use of that is our design showroom. So the second floor in the front of the building that's remaining will be design showroom and office space. As far as water usage, the system that Marshall was describing is a closed loop system. And the number of people that are in the building is going down drastically, so restroom use and whatnot as far as water.
Yeah, I think what John's getting to is we, with this relatively shortage of sewer capacity, we'd like to reclaim some of that capacity for the town if you're not gonna use it. But you would have to be willing to do that. It's my understanding of it, right?
Yep.
I think as he goes through the building use and considers the present and potential future use, I think he'd be certainly willing to meet with the DPW on that exact issue.
Yeah, at least, let's put that into some type of side session so that you can get a better grasp of what we're asking for there. I don't want to put you on the spot on it, but I think it's a great idea. Thanks. John?
Not to belabor the point, but what are the hours that you guys are going to be using the saws?
The saws will be running between 7 AM and 5 PM.
Jim, is there any way, tell me if this isn't reasonable, if we could put a condition in the special permit that says within a year after the certificate of occupancy, there's some kind of sound test at the nearest residential structure, and if it's an unacceptable level, they need to do some soundproofing or some other mitigation?
I think you'll hear from the residents in the interim.
There is a sound bylaw too.
Right, but I'm concerned that if we give them the special permit without a condition and the residents complain, we have no recourse to make them do any kind of mitigation. So I wonder if we-
It's a good point. Let me think about that. Maybe if you have any knowledge of a similar condition elsewhere, share it with me. If
Try to find
not,
one.
let me take a shot at it.
Yeah,
and,
so
the board
we've
take a
done
look at it.
look-back provisions before where we say, okay, 6 months later, let's just reassess it, and if you need to put some insulation up, soundproofing on the rear of the building.
So just as a result of a brief discussion, if at the end of a period of time of full operation, whether it's a year or whatever time frame, if the resident complains and if there's reasonable cause to believe that sound is escaping the building,
Right,
he would have no problem with the requirement to put in additional
sure.
insulation that would block the sound.
Okay, great.
So just-
We'll work up some language on that. Go ahead.
Just
Tim.
the 1 year thing is where I'm kind of saying is where we should go, because that gives all seasons, tree, leaf on,
Right.
leaf off conditions, so you kind of get the full picture.
Right. Do you think you'll be up and running within 1 year, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay,
It would
that,
be a year from certificate of occupancy, so it'd be a year after he's running.
that works fine.
Okay.
Perfectly okay.
My concern is how do we measure that? We don't have any sound standards in town to determine whether or not it's an unacceptable level.
Well, I think if we get any noise complaints,
That's what I was saying. If we
I
get complaints,
think we
we'll
could
know.
probably find a level that's considered reasonable by the building inspector to say if it's above or below this level, they need to do soundproofing to get it to a certain acceptable level.
I'll ask the building commissioner.
I mean, I'm not saying there's gonna be a problem, I'm just saying to protect everybody, might as well put this condition in case there is
Yeah.
something.
I think any sound, as I say, would be exiting from that
Yeah.
southwest side facing west, but we don't have a problem. Adding the insulation, it would be primarily on the south and on the easterly walls, because I don't think we're gonna have a problem with the auto dealership next door, especially with the doors closed, but I don't see that as a problem.
Okay.
My client's been pretty reasonable about my telling him what changes, and we had the meeting at one stop, and he was agreeable to everything.
I had a question, that stone slurry, I think I know the answer to this, but is that hazardous at all? You said it had to be disposed of properly, but does that just mean you can't, why?
Not putting it down the sewer system.
Right, but it's not hazardous.
No,
It's
what it
just
is,
pain
it's
in-
actually a
pain in the
mixture
neck.
of stone dust with water.
Right.
So all the cutting and polishing is done wet to control dust. That dust falls to the floor with water, and then the water goes into the closed loop system. The system will recycle the water, loop it back around. The sludge goes into a holding pallet or container, and then that has to get disposed of.
Right,
So we have a third party dispose of any broken stone, leftover remnants and pieces from the cutting process that gets disposed of. So that gets disposed with the stone slurry. All it is stone dust and water mixed together.
okay.
One more, sorry.
Go ahead,
for being
Jim.
annoying tonight. I know that you're not doing any real exterior modifications, but if you would consider solar panels on the roof, I would strongly encourage that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so any other questions from the board?
I do.
Jim, go ahead.
So I was looking at the plan. Is there a spot on the plan, I just don't see it, where you're going to store your outdoor materials till they're brought inside? I just want you to designate it on the plan.
For storing like the racks for the
Yeah.
stones outside? Yeah, we had talked about in the lower left-hand corner of the parking lot,
Can you
across
highlight
from the building, that they would have, they'd be movable racks right along that area,
Around here.
and that's where he probably would do it.
But they should be on the plan, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I want it on the plan only so if anyone complains about the outdoor visibility,
Yeah.
it's on the approved plan.
Sure, we can just draw some and we'll drop that plan in, sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
And do you have like box trucks to deliver the stone, or how does that work? Do people pick it up, or?
We do, so we do the installation offsite at clients' homes, commercial buildings, whatnot. We use pickup trucks, and we use transit vans.
Where are they gonna be parked?
So most likely they'll be parked in front of the garage bay doors at night, and then they're out during the day from around 8 in the morning to 5, 6 o'clock at night.
And then at your current location, how many trips do you usually make on a day-to-day basis?
How many trips?
Yeah.
So they'll go out in the morning with multiple projects on the truck, and
Yeah.
then they won't come back till the end of the day.
Okay.
And we currently have 4 vehicles.
Okay, and it's gonna be a similar operation that you currently have?
Yes, yeah, we're gonna be moving that operation from Marlboro to Westborough.
Okay.
Well, welcome to town. All right, any other questions? It is a public hearing. Does anyone from the public care to ask a question or make a comment? If you could, just state your name and address for the record.
My name is James Sullivan, 59 Hundreds Road, and I am that neighbor. This building and the abutting buildings are a huge source of noise for our neighborhood. We are woken up many nights during the year with the third-party companies coming in, banging the dumpsters. It is incredibly disruptive. I've been there for 34 years, and it's getting worse. We're also close to WW Auto Body, which is around the other side of Dan's Jeep on Long Meadow Road. Depending on wind conditions, we're smelling paint, acute odors of paint. Now we're taking an office building into our neighborhood and making it a manufacturing plant with cutting and dust and noise. I don't know building construction, but I was there at the building today, and I have pictures to share with you. I believe the back of the building is corrugated. That's not soundproof. I am extremely concerned about the noise and the dust and the disruption. I'm at 5900 Road. My neighbor across the street, who could not be here tonight because of a child, a 1-year-old. They have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old. They'll be affected by this as well. They're equally concerned about this. So what I want to do is share with you the perspective. I've got 3 shots from 5900 Road to Route 9, and I've got 3 shots coming from the building up to our neighborhood, just so you can get some perspective of the proximity of our land and our home to now a manufacturing plant. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making this a public hearing, because we have had no opportunity to challenge what's going on down in those 3 buildings right now. Office space is passive. We don't listen to noise. We don't get dirt and smells from an office building. We fully predict that that's what we're going to experience with a stone cutter in our neighborhood. So if I could share these with you, I don't know.
Yeah, please, bring them up.
Yeah. There's 6 photographs altogether, and I've written the perspective of the photographs. The first 3 are from
Here,
the
want it?
neighborhood.
I think we've only got 1 copy of each, so
And the
if
other
you
3
want
are
to
from Route 9.
take a look and pass it down once you've looked at it. Just give us a second to look at those.
Yep.
Can you pass those down when you're done?
Let's see, which one's the building? You two.
All right, so this is from his house.
Oh, right here, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. There's the building through there. Yeah.
Landry's Bicycles is one of those buildings. That's retail and it's warehousing, and it's trucks. It's certainly not manufacturing. And they have retail hours, and they're finite. That was an evening shot from overnight last night, so that's the noise, that's the light pollution we get from that vicinity.
So, just clarification, this picture, Is that from the parking
From
lot or
80
from
tw-
Route 9?
from,
No, this is from
That's from the
That's
building.
the
building.
building. This is from the building.
up into the neighborhood.
So like where on this?
So that would be looking in that direction.
Here?
Night.
I was along the side here. I'm sorry, this is Landry's, this is 80, that's 80B, and that's the automobile dealership. So it was taken from this angle up into the neighborhood. So unfortunately, we've had the experience with the current businesses that we abut, that they're not noiseless or necessarily clean. Certainly, the smell pollution we're getting from WW Auto Body, that's a concern that we're gonna have some kind of dust or pollution from a stone cutting operation. So, just wanna be on record that we are opposed to this use of this property, converting it from an office use to a manufacturing use in a neighborhood.
Jim, I didn't see any comments from the building commissioner on this. Can we ask him how familiar he is with that building, or maybe even get him into that
I've already
building?
made a note of it, yeah.
Get him into that building to see if that building needs soundproofing for this operation?
Yeah. The other thing, I'd like the board to ask the applicant to address that. Maybe they're willing to offer that at this point.
Okay, well, I don't want to put them on the spot, but I think it would be a good idea for them to consider it. All right.
Well, they've been inside, they know what's inside. so
Sure.
They know if it's corrugated metal.
Well, they told us it was cinder block. So I think we need a third party.
I didn't supply pictures of the building itself, I'm sorry.
Well, I think it's important that we go out and look at it, so that
Yeah.
kind of my next step is to go out and take a look at the
Mr. Chairman,
situation.
through you, if I could ask a question of the applicant.
Go ahead.
Marshall, can you get me in the building?
This was submitted a little bit ago.
So, how about just contact me tomorrow, and we'll set up a time when we can go see the building.
Yeah, that's conservation, right?
Something that's convenient to you, it doesn't have to be tomorrow.
He does not own,
Yeah, I
so
have
he'll
that
have
one.
to contact,
Understood,
who will,
yeah.
he'll try to coordinate that.
Can I also, you don't have to announce it in public, but could you let us know where your existing operation is, so I could maybe take a ride by and just listen to how loud it is? I don't know if we want to
Is that-
share, I don't know if it's appropriate to share that with the Hundreds Roads.
It's gonna be part of the public record if he gives you the information.
Yeah, I'd like to understand from, if there's, I don't know if it's in a residential area, from their abutters, what their experience has been.
Well, I mean, if he's not making noise where he is now, whether he's in a residential or, I'm more concerned about where he's going, if he's gonna make noise next to you. But if we go by there and he's got a full operation going and there's no noise, I mean, obviously I can't inspect the building to see if they have soundproofing in that building, but, you know, I would be curious about it, at the very least.
I think it also is worth noting, I think Marshall mentioned the applicant's been in business for 14 years, so I'm sure this isn't the first time they've come across this, so.
Sure. Okay. All right, what other considerations? I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, I don't. Oh,
When you moved in 34 years ago, what was in that space?
I believe it may have been the very same building, office space.
Okay.
So those buildings have been there all a long time. There've been different tenants and turnover over time, but never any manufacturing.
But the light pollution is probably similar to what would, nothing would be
That's gotten more
changing.
acute, more so across Route 9 with Colonial Volkswagen. They put in,
But not from this property.
not from this property, if you can look at that picture number 4, that shows that whole section of
Yeah.
Route 9 relative to the neighborhood.
So that brings, and I see the building commissioner here, so I'm gonna ask him to come up and
Is there a
maybe,
possibility that he would have some of the pictures for us that he is showing to the board?
yeah,
I
we
don't have
only have one
extra
copy of
copies, but-
each, but, I can, ask Kristen to scan those in and get those to you.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So my question is, when the applicant in your current location, when you said your hours are from 7 to 5, your exterior lights, do you just leave them on by the bay where your vehicles are on, or how would you describe your light pollution in the evening hours?
There are exterior lights just for safety purposes. There are LED lights over the bays and down to the ground.
Okay.
And what about if you have the slabs in the parking lot, will there be lights over them also?
They're in the same vicinity with the garage bay doors, all that. same
Okay,
stuff.
so in other words, one set of lights is going to cover the whole
Correct.
thing.
We don't intend to change the lights.
The
Yeah.
lighting that
Can
is
we,
there now in this
sir,
building will
you don't have to stay
Okay.
up, I mean, if
I
you have
do have
another
questions
comment, you
for
can
you.
raise your hand again,
All
but
right, thank you.
I wanted, the building commissioner is here, and I would like to give him a chance to speak on this, because we did have some questions for him. Fred, do you have a comment for us on this?
While he's coming up, if I could, the history of this building, he's referring to it as office space, but this building has had manufacturing in the past, and most recently, it's been largely office space for a short period of time. But if you look at the history, and there are special permits allowing manufacturing on this property going back, and in 2011, signs for what the use of the building was. So I just don't want anybody to think this is an office building, because that's not traditionally what it has been.
So I'm still not concerned with what it was, I'm concerned with what it will be.
Hi,
Um,
Fred Leonardo, Community
yeah, go
Development
ahead,
Director. I don't know if you want me to comment generally or specifically if you have a question. So,
Feel free.
Yes, I apologize, I didn't have any comments specifically on this special permit. We are going through a limited site plan because they're not affecting that many parking spaces. Sound is a very complicated subject, and I haven't discussed this with the applicants. I don't know if they'd be willing to do this. The only way to scientifically do this would be take readings prior to then taking occupancy for an ambient sound level. Ambient, in this case, sometimes you look at shutting all the equipment off, blah, blah, blah. In this case, presumably if the building is vacant, that would be this ambient sound level. You don't have any sound coming specifically from that building, but you'd have to take readings from the perimeter of the lot. In other words, the edge of the lot, see what the sound ratings are there. They generally do it, and I say they, in past experiences in other towns, what they've done is hired a sound expert that actually has the equipment, scientific equipment to do this. They then establish ambient sound levels prior to operations at the border of the property again. It's day, night, different days of the week. It can be seasonal. In this case, his operation probably doesn't change seasonal, but if it does, you'd have to take that into consideration. So long and the short of it is you have to have an original datum point for the sound level. Then you would chart on a similar, once the building is up and fully operational, you would then compare it to the sound levels at that and see if it raises it to any change. Because you have to allow for the other businesses. They're still operating. That's why you do it different days, different times. It's very scientific and it's very exacting, but it's not inexpensive. There is no way for the town to be able to do that. We've had sound complaints, and the way it's addressed, we can't do it that scientifically. We just don't have the ability to do that.
Okay, I'll have to think about that. I mean, I guess my question for you is, in your experience, would you be able to identify whether this is corrugated metal or cinder block, and whether, in your opinion, it would be
Soundproof.
I don't want to say
Well,
soundproof.
No, so when it comes to construction, there's actually ways to make walls soundproof, and I shouldn't say soundproof, but to diminish the sound. So there's standards, there's accepted standards on how you build those type of assemblies. Again, it gets into whether you even have to do that. You have to see if the sound level from the manufacturing, in this case, the stone cutting is actually mitigating outside the building. So generally, if it doesn't have some kind of insulation built into the wall system now, and generally it's what's referred to as thermal fiber, it has some sound quality, so it absorbs the sound. If it's just corrugated tin, as some of the older buildings are, with very little or no insulation, there's no retention of sound. It's gonna basically vibrate through the building, if you will.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm asking is if they can get us into the building, would you go on that visit and give us your opinion of whether it's got some sound diminishing qualities to the building, or whether additional soundproofing measures could be added or should be added?
Well, those are three different questions.
Well, I want your opinion
Yes,
first,
I
because I
certainly
value
don't
your
have a
opinion.
problem looking
Yeah.
at it and giving you an opinion. Whether they should be added or not, it can only be determined once the operation is there, and whether it adds to the sound in the area.
Right, and we talked about a look-back period to
But the
after.
look-back period is completely useless unless you have a datum on which to go from. So you'd either have to stop the operation in the future to get an ambient sound level. The whole key is the ambient sound level. So in past experience, what happens with the ambient sound level is you have to shut the operation down, because you have to stop when the operation is not functioning.
Well, the operation isn't running 24/7. I mean, I think it could be stopped for half an hour to run ambient. I mean,
No,
how long does
that's
this
not the way it works,
Well,
because you have to have the other facilities operating, otherwise you're not getting a true reading of what's going on in the neighborhood.
Okay.
That's why they do it. If you look, this is when you get into sound, it's very scientific and very expensive. They look at different times of the day and night. So ambient on Route 9 is much different than ambient on, one of the neighborhoods up on West Main Street. Because the operation's ambient here, that's why they would typically go to the edge of the property lines. But you have to take into account what's happening with the other buildings, because that adds to the ambient sound.
No, I get that, but you could find a time when those other buildings are running and his operation wasn't.
You
If we-
could, but again, it goes over a number of days, so you'd have to ask at that point in time for them to stop their operation. Could you do that? Certainly.
I think it would be prudent if we toured the building, just to see, and at that point, perhaps the applicant can propose some type of mitigation for soundproofing. But it seems almost unreasonable to put through an expensive exercise to figure out what the sound would be.
I also think we need to go to this current location to determine if sound is actually
Right.
an issue. Because we're talking about an issue that I don't know if we know is actually an issue.
My experience is that, I would say more of my concern was that if their dock doors are on the back of the building and they were up during the day and they were running their saws,
Right.
I think that would be the concern of what the noise pollution was coming from. But the fact that they're moving it to the side of the building, that eases my concern on that. And it's facing Dan's Jeep or whatever it is.
They also indicated that they're only gonna have the doors open to bring the material in, and once the material is in, but I also, you gotta think for heating and cooling purposes, it doesn't make sense to have those doors open.
Correct.
So without getting into, so some of that can be mitigated simply by, in not seeing as complete cutting operations, but sometimes you could be able to enclose the cutting operation so that the soundproofing or the minimizing of the sound could be done around that operation. So, the things we're talking about is, you're correct, you're putting the applicant to a point where he might be spending money that's not well spent, because he doesn't know it's a problem until it's a problem. But I don't think the look back is unreasonable. I certainly don't have a problem going out there now and looking at what he's proposing, and if there's anything in the construction that would mitigate the sound now, those are reasonable to
I don't want to create a huge expense for a small business coming to
Right.
town. I think that's, I think it's a noisy location even without this operation, and
Correct.
I don't think that's ever gonna go away, unfortunately for the neighbors. But I also don't wanna make it worse than what's there, and, if the building does have some qualities that help reduce the sound coming from the inside, because it sounds like all the noisy stuff will be going on inside the building, then I'd like to know that. So if we could look at the building and get a sense of that, at least your opinion as an experienced professional, so.
Sure. The other thing the board could consider is, to the point of the resident, was that you could prohibit the unloading and loading of dumpsters. The board, I think, has weighed on that before.
Time restrictions.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, and while we're at it, could you look at the lights at Colonial Volkswagen, because those are awfully bright, let me tell you. That's those pictures, I don't know if those comply with the lighting bylaws in this town, so that's a separate issue and not for this applicant, but.
Usually we get into requests for shielding, which is not an unreasonable request if that's been a problem.
Yeah, well, I would suggest that that's a problem, given those pictures we looked at, and unfortunately, not everyone here can see those, but they are public record, and we'll get those scanned in and available. What's next?
I think Marshall has,
Marshall, comments?
I was, sorry. I just want to point out to the board that as you look at the screen directly to the west or the left as you're looking, there's obviously a car dealership, and on the right there's Landry, a bicycle place. But in the rear, what you don't see here, there are two buildings. One is a Landco, they're an HVAC contractor, and the other is what? Oh, WW Auto Body. So it is surrounded by those buildings, so the least noise certainly would be coming, I assume, from the Landry's bicycle place. But aside from all the noise being inside, we heard the neighbor say that the walls are just corrugated metal. That's in fact not the case. I just learned that the outside is corrugated metal. On the inside of that corrugated metal, on the sides and in the back, there is considerable insulation, and then there is the cinder block. He said those walls are about 1.5 feet thick. So it is not just sound going through the metal that, or the corrugated metal that we're talking about. That's number one. Number two, I just learned that across the street, right next to Colonial, is a company called Ideal Stone, and they do similar work to what Stone Inc. does. So if anybody is concerned to see how noisy it is, now I don't know if they do the operation with the doors closed or the doors open, but we certainly would have no problem with the condition that the work is to be done with the doors closed, because that's what he is representing. And as he said, that's all going to be heated and air-conditioned space, so they're not going to want to keep the doors open. And there is a considerable amount of noise coming from the car dealership and at times from the auto body place. But the outdoor noise, and to hear what the building commissioner said, at the bounds of the property, I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with the sound. But if you want to put in that at the end of a year, or a year of full operation, or a year, whatever you want, that if you want to have the building commissioner go out and check at the bounds, and if he believes the sound is too much, that they have to put in additional soundproofing.
Okay.
I just had one brief question. Is the new structure or the new building that you're going to be using similar to the one you already are situated in Marlborough? Is it the same type of building?
It is in a sense that the exterior is the corrugated metal. The building that we're in now doesn't have the cinder block layer on the inside. It's just a corrugated metal open warehouse with insulation on the inside.
And how's the sound there, outside?
You really can't hear anything outside.
Okay, that's what I wondered about. I'm just trying to look at it. It's easier to compare apples to apples if I could find out what the building is, so that you'd be willing to share the address for that, so if we wanted to go up and just take a look, we could do that.
Sure.
Okay.
And then what you don't see here, some of the work that's gonna be done is gonna be a room that's created within this now largely open area from floor to ceiling. So he has no problem with anybody inspecting before or even while he's operating, because he's not concerned about the sound levels outside or at the boundary lines of the property. So, yeah, we'll cooperate in whatever way you feel is appropriate.
Thank you, Fred. You can go sit down. All right, any other questions or comments from the public? All right, so we're going to continue.
One follow-up. So
Sure.
If there is a sound problem, what is our recourse? I understand the look-back period, and I appreciate you considering that. But if on month 2, we determine that it's out of control, I don't want to wait 12 months.
Right.
What is the process within the town to seek relief from that currently?
I think we could probably, we'll have to work on the wording of that look-back period, but we could say that if there were, some kind of noise issue within the first 12 months, that we could revisit that with the applicant.
Do
So
I
it wouldn't just be,
present,
you
do I
would- you
make
would-
an appeal to this board?
you
to
would
the-
appeal
to
I presume to the town,
the building
to the
commissioner?
building
Okay.
commissioner
That's
first.
all, I just want clarification, it sounds very positive if they're gonna do a self-enclosed building within the building, with a self-enclosed workspace, that
Right.
sounds promising.
Right.
But I just wanna know, where do we go if it doesn't turn out the way it sounds?
Well,
It
you'd
sounds
start with the
great
building
tonight, but-
commissioner, and if it had to come back to us, it could.
Great.
So,
Thanks very
well, that's
much.
the point of the look back, so. All right, we're gonna continue this to the 20th.
You have a motion.
Who wants to make that?
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the special permit application of Stone Inc. at 80 Turnpike Road till Tuesday, December 20th, 2022 at 6:30 PM.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? It's 5-0 in favor of continuing this hearing. All right, we're moving right along quickly. Continuation of public hearing for 180, 182 Turnpike Road site plan application.
Thank you, Mr. 48 Flanders.
Mr. 48 Flanders.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have you're right. We have a preliminary subdivision plan for 48 Flanders Road, Waterman Design. Look at me, I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh. All right. Jim, any comments before we start on this?
This is a preliminary plan for conventional subdivisions. Conventional subdivisions don't require an open space concept plan if there's less than 10 acres, and there's less than 10 acres on this property. The applicant has chosen to do a conventional subdivision. He could choose to do an open space, but he's chosen not to. The neighborhood is composed mostly of conventional lots, so it's intended to match that. Again, this is not a public hearing. This is an informal discussion in front of the board. The applicant will eventually receive direction from this board in the form of approval, hopefully, for them to proceed to the definitive phase, at which time there will be a public hearing. The proposal's for 3 lots on a cul-de-sac at 48 Flanders Road. The applicant is here to make their presentation.
Okay, who wants to lead? Go ahead, name and title for the record, and then,
Good evening, Barry Atchison with WDA Design Group.
Jerry Hodger, also WA Design Group as well.
As Jim had mentioned, this is a conventional subdivision. We presented to you guys early last month. They are proposing to put a 600-foot long road in. They are proposing to put 3 homes. One of the homes will be serviced by the town sewer system, and we've discussed connections with the town engineer. The other 2 will have on-site septic systems. Municipal water will be provided to the 3 homes, and stormwater and so forth will be collected on site and treated and discharged accordingly. Beyond that, there isn't too much different than we presented last time. I did receive a few comments from the fire department and
Board of Health.
Board of Health. Thank you, Jim. And we will be addressing those comments by the end of this week for everybody.
A couple, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead,
A couple of the things the application requested are 3 waivers from the subdivision rules and regs. Those are important to discuss because the board has to approve those waivers. Now, Barry, could you just present what your thoughts are? First, noting that the design that he shows here complies with our rules and regulations. His intention is to modify the width of the road so that there's less need for off-grading, to modify the slope on the road so that there's less need for cuts and fills. And the third waiver is brought about by the first 2. He needs a side slope grading waiver to allow a slope steeper than 3:1.
And then there's another one for reducing the distance for a leveling area for the road. The road isn't going to be continued. It's landlocked as it is, so it's not getting any bigger.
Can you
or
speak
long-
into the mic? Even I'm having trouble.
Sorry. The road isn't getting any longer or any bigger, but in order to help out with the grading, it'd be helpful to have a 50-foot landing area prior to entering Flanders Road as a intersection.
Questions on the waivers? Go ahead.
What is going to be done for the steeper grade to mitigate erosion?
At the moment, it's going to be grass and stabilized. Whether there's additional landscaping, trees or bushes or anything in there, we'll looking at that, and we'll continue to look at that into the next phase.
John, was your question during construction or permanent condition?
Permanent condition.
And I'm also temporarily will be stabilized as well. But that's also the hope to reduce that.
So what is the slope of the road? You're asking for a waiver, on what the traditional is, so what is the difference between the 2?
It's currently designed as a 9%. It's well, it meets your code of 6%. We'd like to go to a 9% off-grade sloped road.
That's fairly significant, I would say. Is this a road that would eventually be dedicated to the town, or is this going to be a private road?
Private.
So you're planning a conventional subdivision based on these plans. It seems like you're going to have 3 houses here that are going to be kind of stuck in the middle of many existing homes. What kind of privacy and, other drainage issues? I mean, these are all things that I'm concerned about, especially given the elevation changes between yourself and your neighbors.
Right.
I know if I had woods behind me and somebody stuck a couple of houses up there that are 50 feet higher than my house, I would lose a lot of privacy in my yard, so I'm just concerned about the impact on the neighborhood. You don't think a open space subdivision would be less impactful and leave a large, I mean, I can't make you do that, but it would leave a large section of open space back there that,
Right, at this time, this is the route that the
Owner
applicant
wants.
would like to proceed with.
so wouldn't it be much cheaper to put a shorter road in too, and a common septic system? I'm just a little confused by,
Yeah, I'm
I
not
don't wanna-
exactly sure what as far as the open, but it's been through many phases now, and that was ruled out as an option.
yeah, it's kind of a weird shaped lot. It may have been
It's a very
because of the
weird-
shape of the lot.
The first lot on the left, that lot is very steep. That's why he's placed the house where it is.
Right. Yeah, if they were 15,000 square foot lots, you'd have to build on that slope, and that wouldn't be desirable either. All right. That's one of the inflexibilities of that open space zoning, is that you can't go higher than 15,000 square feet at
Right.
all. So,
You don't have many options, such a small lot.
right. All right. What other questions from the board?
Comment, really. I think I made this comment before, and I'm just going to reiterate it. Behind number 44, it looks like it's the closest to the street. I would suggest heavy landscaping. To Mark's point, they're going to be losing their privacy.
Yep.
So just landscape for shielding rather than screening. Same for 46, though they've got a little bit more space over there. And landscape using native species.
What's that?
Landscaping using native species.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Yeah, just to get, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, through
Go
you. Just again, to get this on record, so the road is intended to be private?
That's correct.
Okay.
If the waivers are all granted, to reduce the width and so forth, I believe you would continue that to be private.
The town engineer is here. I'm not necessarily asking Lisa to comment on that, but I just bring that up because obviously, if the town is not plowing this road, it does make it easier for us to grant those waivers.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, I would agree with that. I don't know that we need Lisa to comment on that, other than common sense.
Okay?
But Lisa, if you have anything to add to that? No? You can shake your head no, and that's fine.
The DPW has no interest in inheriting this as a public road, so my recommendation will be to allow it to be a private road. We haven't had a chance, but we will have multiple comments coming soon, and the drainage and screening were some of those that we're looking at now.
Well, this is still preliminary, right? So
Right.
yeah, I'm sure we'll get many more comments as we go on this one, so. I assume there'll be some type of HOA maintenance agreement in place for this road. It's pretty standard these days on private roads, so not sure we have to state the obvious on that. What else? Any other questions from the board? I think we're ready to move forward. I think the waivers will be, as Jim stated, much easier to overcome since it's a private road.
True.
All right, let's move on. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
So are you going to have them back in on the 20th?
Yeah,
I move that the planning board continue its discussion of the preliminary subdivision plan for 48 Flanders Road to Tuesday, December 20th, 2022 at 6:30 PM.
Second.
John, go ahead.
What do we need to have them come back for?
I'm still looking for town departments to give me comments. I only have 2 town departments to give me comments.
And we need a formal vote to
You
have them
need a
back.
decision to approve.
Well,
I
we need,
wouldn't have you vote tonight without a written decision. You need conditions on the request for waivers.
no, but we need to have a vote to have them back.
Yes.
Okay, because we can't just say, all right, well, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of continuing this? That's 5-0. Okay. Next item, thank you everyone for being so patient, is continuation of the public hearing for 180, 182 Turnpike Road site plan application. After this, I'm going to see if anybody needs a recess, because people will need to clear the room, and I just want to make sure everybody's doing okay. So, but for now, Marshall, are you going to?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm going to do a brief introduction. I think you all know these parties. This is Ashley Pegram, and we have Nick Burnt, both from the company that's looking to do the 182 Turnpike Road. At the last meeting, that was October 25, we were asked to do 2 things. We were asked to go back to the drawing board, see if we can come up with any more compromises that would make the project more compatible, I will say, with the wishes of the neighbors. They did, and what we have is a pictorial presentation, but I also want to make sure that the board has received and reviewed the letter responses that we had given that were dated November 30th. Did everybody, I hope, get those letters? Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley and Nick. Thank you.
Good evening. Nicholas Byrne, TTVHY, Westborough. We were asked previously to go back, look at our project, see about some additional compromises that we could make based on some of the public comment that we've received. So I just want to take a moment to go through real quickly the compromises we've made to date since our last hearing, as well as the final compromise that we're proposing.
Nick, please speak into the mic. I can see people having trouble hearing. Thank
As
you.
well as the compromise we're proposing this evening. So one of the first compromises, we heard feedback from Walker Meadow regarding the dumpster, the sound that's associated with it. So on the original submittal plan, we've moved the dumpster location from the rear of the property a lot closer to Route 9. Currently, there's 3 separate locations of dumpsters behind the existing buildings. So we're proposing one location enclosed in an enclosure with gates, and obviously having one location limits the amount of trash trucks that are moving around the site. Fueling station, if we go to the next one, fueling station, there was concern over screening. So in addition to the concrete screen wall that was on the original submittal, and please, if there's any questions, just stop me as I run through. We were asked to provide additional landscape screening, so that was on the last submittal that we proposed as well. So there's a concrete wall, and then there's additional landscaping that we've proposed. One of the other comments was concerns over light and noise from the property. So again, we've proposed the 18-foot tall evergreens and just showing clearly where those are proposed on the site. Again, that was proposed at the last meeting as well. Additional concerns have been raised over snow storage. So we've identified additional locations on the site where we can have snow storage. And we also commit to still hauling off as needed, obviously at a cost to us based on weather and that sort of thing.
Just one question then, if you hesitate in between. How are you going to do snow plowing on the 3rd floor of the building?
We've actually talked with a couple local snow removal companies to get that addressed. There's several different options that we have where they can load snow from the 3rd level and then haul it down. There's options where they can dump snow from the 3rd level off the side. And because we have roof drains up on the 3rd level, they can also, depending on the amount of snow, push it to certain corners and let it melt up there, depending on weather and the amount of snow that we get.
Is there gonna be a certain trigger, and maybe this is a question for Jim, as to when the snow has to be removed?
We don't require them to remove snow from their property. It's up to them to provide free access for emergencies, but we don't make a trigger as to when they need to remove the snow, if that's what you mean. The next item, obviously, there was a lot of concern raised over safety for the westernmost entrance, existing curb cut to the property. That's been changed to entrance, thank you, changed to entrance only. So we're showing that here and reiterating that. The next slide, the car wash, we've changed the orientation and direction of travel from the car wash. As cars flow through the car wash, they exit out the side that is facing the existing automotive use, so we no longer have headlights shining towards Walker Meadows. They're shining towards existing automotive use.
Can you go to the original, zoom in on the original, please? Thank you.
The next slide, we were asked by the town to incorporate some more green energy into the project. So we're proposing 4 additional EV charging locations in the public parking lot, in addition to what we originally proposed. So that brings our total to 6 publicly accessible EV charging stations. And this kind of starts the discussion of probably the greatest concern, which is lighting. So just want to go through the items that we've done to date. Originally, we submitted a plan that has light poles that are 20 feet tall on top of the parking deck. We revised those down to 15 feet 6 back in September. The board asked us to look at the 2 southernmost poles to see if we could reduce those even further. We did so. Those are now 13 foot 6. And an important thing to note as we get into the internal shielding, we've also adjusted the head orientation, so those pole heads are facing away from Walker Meadows to further shield the light source. Yep. This right here is the light shielding. We've provided these photos in the past, but really wanted to illustrate the internal and external shields and how they block visibility of the light source and really provide a cutoff on the back side of the light fixture. And I think when we get into the luminescence plans that's forthcoming in the photometrics, you're going to see how that impacts the actual lighting levels. This is a visual, 2 visuals. The top visual is if 100% of the site lighting is on. So it graphically represents the lighting levels, and you can see the highest lighting levels being directly underneath the pole head. The property line is identified there to the south, which is approximately 80 feet at the shortest amount from the back of curb line. The back of curb with the light shields has roughly 0 to half a foot candle. So we don't have any light spill, it's controlled lighting. The plan on the bottom is when we committed to turning 50% of the lighting off after hours. So we wanted to give you a graphic representation of the amount of light and, from my perspective, the lack of the amount of light that will be there after hours. So you can see between the building, the property line, the landscaping buffer, we're not showing any light there.
Can you remind us what's after hours?
1 hour after closing, so I believe we said 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact time. I think it was roughly 9 p.m. Of course, car guys, when they're doing a deal, it's kind of hard to get them out of the building.
So, on the bottom image, the back of the building, are there going to be any security lights on the actual building? On
the back, the only thing would be any code-required egress lighting for any exit man doors. There's only 1 overhead door on the back of the building. Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the detail bays, there's an overhead door.
Yes.
So there would be very minimal, if any, wall pack. The other thing that you're seeing and why it looks so dark there is when we get to the additional screening that we've done, we've closed up all the openings of the parking deck on the south and southwest side. So you're not seeing any of that lighting come through, which is why it looks like a solid blue there. This is just cursory. We can go back and reference if we need to, but that was the exact photometrics where it gives you the lighting levels at various locations. That information was used for the graphic illustration, and that was all put together by the lighting manufacturers. The one thing I want to point out, after our last meeting, and I actually drove out to the site to get a better understanding of the lighting. And I'll be honest and say I was extremely surprised at the light levels associated with the automotive facility next door. So Westside Engineering went out to the site and took some photometric levels and readings in the public right-of-way and that sort of thing, just as a comparison. And I'm happy to share this information, but as a talking point, if you start in the top left-hand corner, you can see where there's a reading there of 27.7 foot candles. That is behind their poles. You can see the concrete bases there, so it's on the back side of the light fixture. And as a point of comparison, roughly, if you look at our lighting levels, we're plus or minus 3 foot candle in the same location. So we're 10.8% of the lighting that you see there. And I know lighting has been a big topic of conversation. I think it's really important to get a visual representation of the lighting that we have actually designed for the site. If you look closer, a little further away from those poles, closer to Route 9, you see a lighting level of 15.7 foot candles. If you go back to our photometric plan, we're plus or minus 1 foot candle in a similar location. So we're 6.4%. If you go out to the sidewalk at Route 9 in front of the adjacent automotive facility, they're at 3.5 foot candles. Our design shows roughly 0.4, which is 11.4% of the lighting that they have. And probably one of the most important ones on the back side of the site, near the property lines, back of curb, I'll say, which this is a lot further behind back of curb than where we're at, but roughly 10 feet behind back of curb, they're at 7.7 foot candles. We're at 0 foot candles, if you look at our lighting plan. So that's just some reference material. So with concerns over the parking deck, you'll see we started with open cable railing on our parking deck. We heard the concerns of Walker Meadows for noise and lighting. We added, back in September, a roughly 42-inch tall concrete knee wall to shield headlights, reduce sound. That was on both levels of parking deck. After our last meeting in October, we've been asked by the town to go back and make some additional compromises, and we think what we're proposing is awfully substantial. On the second level of deck, on the south and southwest sides, it's fully enclosed from floor to ceiling, so nothing can come through. On the top level of deck, we've raised it from 42 inches to a top of 8 feet, 0 inches. And that's illustrated here with the solid walls. You asked about the wall packs and any lighting on the building. You can kind of see there's a few man doors and one overhead door there that would probably have a wall pack on them or something like that. And of course, I think it's important to reference that we've agreed to pass on the easement for the B-Wall Trail, which, as you can see here, is roughly a half mile of trail. And we think obviously that's significant for the town and what you guys are trying to achieve here.
Okay.
That's all we have.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Oh, I just think the applicant's gone back and done a lot of what we've asked, and I think what Walker Meadows has asked. So I'm happy to see that they've done this.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the additional EV parking spaces. I think that's a good addition. And is it effectively an 8-foot wall on the back of the top level of the parking
Yes,
deck?
solid concrete wall, 8 feet above the finished floor elevation of that deck.
No headlights are going to be getting through that, I would assume.
I don't believe so.
I think those are good changes.
I have no comments.
I have a question. I think you've done some really good changes, and I do appreciate everything you've done. I had a question unrelated to some of the things we talked about, and it had to do with your sewer line. I'm struggling to read the plans on this, but on the utilities plan, I don't see where that sewer line's coming in. I know you're going down through Carmax. Is that correct?
So the sewer line, let me see, I have the plans, give me 1 second, I'll pull them up.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hit you with this last minute like this, but I'm just concerned we have a property uphill from you. And I want to make sure that we're planning for the future there. I don't want to create a lot of expense on this, but once your building's in place, it's going to be hard to put a sewer line in underneath it. Yeah.
Mark, this
Yeah.
is the Walker Meadows.
Yeah.
They have a sewer line that comes out to here,
Yeah,
and then it runs down here in the back
okay,
and goes out to property Lyman Street. And then from Bertucci's, there's a line that comes down and over and ties in.
okay.
So, if you go back to that,
Yeah, so that property uphill from you
yeah.
could connect down through I mean, I don't know if the B-Walt easement would allow us
Say
to
that
put
again?
I don't know if that B-Walt easement would allow us to put a sewer line under it or not, is what I'm saying.
Currently is in there already.
It is.
It's an existing line.
If you go back to.
The entire easement has a sewer line in it.
This
currently.
building that's right here,
Yeah.
the existing 180, when CarMax was purchased and built and modified,
Yeah,
they used to have the septic system out here in the front as part of their agreement. CarMax demolished their
Sure.
treatment and tied them in. There's currently now a pump station here at the lower end with a 2-inch pipe that cuts over and ties in and dumps into the existing sewer that runs there.
right.
It's an
And so-
8-inch
Yeah,
line.
what about the property uphill, though?
up here.
Yeah,
He's talking west of that.
Yeah,
well, no,
West of- no,
yeah,
that's a Curry copy
yeah.
right here.
Yeah. What,
So,
again, I know they're not serviced by town sewer, I just want to make sure that we're planning for the future there in case they need a connection. I mean,
the
that building
current
may
line
not be
from-
there forever.
that I have calced out from the tie-in where Walker Meadows and down to this location, which is the data that I have, woefully underused. We're talking, we've got about 9% or 10% use of capacity used in that existing line. So there's plenty there. I just don't know what's beyond that.
Yeah, I think you're, so essentially you're asking if Curry was to try and connect to the sewer, what they would need to do is they're certainly uphill. They would come by gravity out the back of their building into the easement that is there for the bicycle trail and run right down that easement and connect to the sewer that is in the center of that easement.
Okay. Okay, that is the question I had. I just want to make sure we're, again, planning for the future there. I'm not sure the properties west of Curry are a different elevation. It starts to go back downhill, and I'm not sure those would be applicable, but, right, okay. All right. Any other comments, questions? Oh, John, go ahead.
Sorry, did fire department review the truck turning plan and sign off on it?
And I don't want to answer for Waterman, but Waterman met with the fire department. We received comments today.
Okay.
You don't have them yet because I don't know if the fire department's had an opportunity to review them, so.
Okay.
Barry, you sent me your notes from today.
Yes, Barry from our office met with the chief of the fire department on Monday at 1 o'clock, went through any questions he had, and then we prepared a written response to him on Monday night. I went to him last night or this morning. So they path analyses at the front of the building, so we've shown how that can be addressed, and that's been given back to them, so.
Yeah, we got that late afternoon, Randy, so we're gonna discuss that at the next meeting more in depth, because,
Yeah,
we're trying to hold to that
Yep.
Thursday deadline and not
Yep.
Tuesday at 4
No, we didn't
deadline.
expect you to even talk about it. We're just saying that we've met with him, we believe we've addressed the comments, and we will have to wait till they respond.
Okay. Again, I want to make sure everybody, including the public, has had a chance to see that. So we'll bring that memo up at the next meeting, and you can have some time to prepare to answer any questions on that, so.
Could you bring up the ingress and egress? I mean, I'm looking at the, okay, we're going to discuss the fire truck turning, and I need to get it back out again.
I think they're having a turn right here.
But you can't get back on the.
What's the question?
I just want to know, I wanted to see ingress and egress. Maybe I ought to wait till the next meeting, because the way you're showing the driveways and the way the ladders come in and out makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever, so.
Well,
I'll
I mean,
look
I
at
think
that
we can certainly get the chief to comment on that, or somebody from the fire department to.
Could I just ask, I'm sorry, Hazel, we could not hear what you were saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the ingress and egress from the property. If you could put that up, I mean, I think you had.
The fire trucks, again, I
Well,
think
no,
we should.
I was
address-
just, I'm willing to start with the regular
Ingress.
ingress and egress.
So, just to briefly summarize, so the
Randy, can you
westerly,
use the mic, please?
the westerly entrance to the property,
Yeah,
so as you come in from Route 9, that is a one-way entrance into the site only.
For deliveries only, not public access.
Correct.
all right.
So
And
that's-
how do those people get out? They drive around the building and go out on
Correct.
the second driveway?
Correct.
Everybody goes out from the second driveway.
Yeah, so we're not letting cars out on that westerly entrance, out onto Route 9 at all.
All right, now what about the second entrance into the property for probably customers, I guess, along the front there?
Yep.
How do they get back out again?
They would go out the same way. So if they come in over here on the easterly side, those two driveways that are out there today are not being changed. So vehicles would still pull in on the right-hand turn, come into the front of the site, and that's where the customers would park out in the front of the property. And then when they leave, they would go out the existing paved driveway that leaves the site today. So those two paved driveways don't change at all.
Okay.
Okay. Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
well, yeah, I'll just look at it further. I'll wait to hear from the fire department.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, so questions or comments from the public, if you could come to the microphone, name and address for the record, and please ask your question.
Wayne Webster, 3 Essex Way. Although we've had several, obviously many hearings on this back to August, I want to take a moment and express our gratitude to the applicant for working hard and taking efforts to address our issues on light and sound pollution. We're seeing all of this for the first time. It's the way it is. We'd appreciate getting a copy of that, if it's possible, to send that off to us electronically. We would want to review that with the homeowners at Walker Meadow. We won't make comment on it now because we think that would be unfair, just seeing it for the first time. We'd like to discuss it with our attorney, and I would imagine all of you, if you had a little more time with it, would find that useful. But we are pleased to see the effort that was made. What we would request, and I think you're already discussing it, but I don't know, that there would be a continuance of this hearing possibly to the 20th, so that we would have that time to look over, discuss with our homeowners.
Yeah, the hearing will be continued to the 20th.
It will be continued,
Yeah, we
okay.
already have a request from
And
the
we will do
applicant.
all that we can during those 2 weeks to get questions or issues off to the applicant, not, hopefully not wait until the very last Thursday, but we certainly will have all of our
questions to you or to the applicant no later than the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting. So again, I want to express my gratitude for the effort that's been done, and we look forward to working with all of you to a good outcome. Thank you.
Marshall, did you have comments?
I just want to, thanks for your nice words, Mike, but I want to correct one thing. I was asked at the last meeting to respond to the attorney for Walker Meadow, and attorney ethics, once there's an attorney involved, we don't communicate directly with the attorney's client. So I did send the same presentation that I sent off to the town. I also sent the letter advising all of the changes that have been made and what we're going to be doing. And I know that either Mr. Webster or the attorney has been checking routinely with the planning board. So they do have it, and we look forward to hearing any comments. But I will say that at the last meeting, that was 5 weeks ago, and before that it was roughly... Thank you, sorry. At the last meeting, which was 5 weeks ago, and prior to that, I believe it was 4 weeks ago, the clients and the engineer and myself have been working very hard, as you can tell by the presentation, to make a lot of changes. They are not being made with the idea that there is more to come. We said to them, give us everything you can do, and we believe they have done that, and they've asked whether we think it's reasonable, and I said all the concerns that we have seen in the letters have been from the units looking out and seeing this bright field of light or glare, and we've eliminated that occurrence. You've heard from the presentation what's presented, and it was submitted to the board on Thursday, and I hope the board all had a chance to look at that. And Wayne, I'd be happy to send you the same link. I assumed your attorney would have sent you whatever he had. But sure, we look forward to talking to you. But I think pretty much what you see physically for the location is what the applicant is prepared to do. And this has been with a lot of pushing from them to us and from us to them. And I think we came up with a good resolution.
No, I think I understand that, Marshall. I just, we'll make sure that Walker Meadow and the public have a chance to look at that. Obviously, we want your comments and feedback on these changes when you've had time to review them. We'll make sure that you'll communicate either with the attorney or directly with them, but if you need copies of any of this, you can request it from the planning department.
It is a digital link to see the presentation, so either Jim can send it or I can send it, but without your attorney's permission, I really shouldn't be sending it.
I'll check with him tomorrow.
Okay. All right, any other public comments or questions? I did have one question about the car wash. Was there an open issue with using recycled water? Am I making that up, or?
We need to address it because all the car washes we have in town use recycled water.
Okay,
And you just heard the stone cutting business recycles their water.
right. Okay. Any comments, Marshall?
No, I'd just say that we have infrastructure for a future reclaim system. I guess if the town is requiring us to use reclaim, I just need to get that feedback, if that's a requirement of approval.
I'm saying that's what we do elsewhere. All car washes use reclaimed water. That's what we ask for, and everyone complies.
Yeah. It's my understanding it's cheaper, right?
I would think it is cheaper.
You are using less water from our side. It's a quality issue. There's also chemicals and things that you have to buy. So at most of our locations, we try to avoid it because the quality of the wash is not as good. Then it brings in the need for additional labor and things like that. As I stated, we do already plumb for it. The plans already reflect for the plumbing to be there. So it's as simple as us adding the equipment. We don't have to come back and tear up slabs or do any of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would prefer that we recycle the water there. It's not I don't think it's a big ask if you're installing it from the get-go. I don't get my car washed often enough, but when I do, the quality of wash in town is perfectly fine. So I don't necessarily understand that. And if it's cheaper to operate, I don't understand the logic behind not doing it. So, Ashley, did you have a comment?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, she got up, I didn't know if you had something to add, or, all right. It sounds like we have another open issue to discuss, and maybe you could, if that's your final answer on that, we'll have to discuss that as a board at next meeting. Is there any other open issues? I think it's the
I
fire.
don't know if the town engineer has any open issues other than that. I'd say just continue the hearing.
We're working on them, we should have, most of our stuff is on.
Okay, so
Okay.
for those of you that didn't hear, the engineering department is working on a few open issues from the engineering review, but I don't think they're ready to comment on those tonight. Jim, did you have something else?
No?
Okay. And I don't see anyone else from the public, so we have a request for a continuance from the applicant dated December 6th to the planning board, and attention James E. Robbins, town planner, to the members of the planning board regarding 180-182 Turnpike Road, Westborough, Mass. We are scheduled for a public hearing for a site plan review application on 180-182 Turnpike Road on December 6, 2022. Anticipating this matter may require additional hearing dates, I respectfully grant the planning board additional time through December 20th, 2022 for continued public hearings, and that's signed Marshall Gould, attorney for the applicant. Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the site plan review application of 180-182 Turnpike Road to Tuesday, December 20th, 2022 at 6:30 as requested by the applicant.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? That's 5-0. So thank you all for coming in. I would just ask that if you could exit as quickly as possible, you can take conversations downstairs. We're not done. We have quite a bit more business, and we can't do it when it's noisy. Does anybody on the board want a recess? Let's keep going. Okay, just making sure there's no bathroom breaks or anything. All right. Dinner break would be great, yeah. What's dinner? All right, next item on the agenda is a continuation of the public hearing for 190-212 Oak Street site plan application. I have a request from the applicant for continuation. It's dated December 6, 2022, to address to Jim, town planner, town of Westborough. We hereby request continuance of the public hearing on Hana Place scheduled for tonight to the next planning board meeting, and that's signed Farouk Ansari, who is the owner of of Oak Street. Any questions on that? No. Okay, do we have a motion on Oak Street?
Oh,
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the site plan review application for 190-212 Oak Street to Tuesday, December 20th, 2022 at 6:30 PM as requested by the applicant.
second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor of continuing the Oak Street public hearing. Next item on the agenda is a continuation of the public hearing for the earth moving permit at 25 Gleason Street. I also have, sorry, I'm looking for, Okay, sorry.
Here's the letter.
A letter requesting a continuance on this hearing. It's dated December 5th, 2022, addressed to the Westborough Planning Board and regarding special permit earth moving at the Ward property on Gleason Street. Dear Mr. Robbins, on behalf of Walter Ward, the landowner, and Milford Stone, the operator, collectively the applicants, we request a continuance of the public hearing scheduled for December 6th, 2022 until the planning board's next meeting, presumably December 20th, 2022. We have received the updated survey information with the new wetland limits and the corresponding buffer zones and are revising the plans to reflect those and the questions, comments of DPW. Later this week, we will deliver the revised site plans to the board and DPW. We apologize for the unforeseen delay and appreciate your patience. We look forward to seeing the planning board in December. Sincerely, Michael Scott from Land Design Collaborative, on behalf of the owner. Any questions?
I'd just like to comment that this is taking entirely too long. It really concerns me. This is not a new problem with this piece of property, and this has been going on forever. And I just would like to register my concern about the length of time that we have been continuing this after the length of time where it was a problem in the first place. So I'm just like to register that for the record.
All right.
So-
Any other comments on the request for continuance? I'm sorry, is it continuation or continuance? I need to know.
It's a continuance of
Okay,
the continued public hearing.
I've been saying it wrong. All right, so on the continuance, do we have a motion?
I move the planning board continue the public hearing for the earth-moving special permit for 25 Gleason Street to Tuesday, December 20th, 2022 at 6:30 PM as established, or as requested by the applicant.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor of continuing that?
Excuse me, sir. Sorry. We and my neighbors here represent the folks who live at Danya Drive, Gleason Street. And the thing is, this is new to us. I apologize if
Yeah,
I seem
so,
ignorant.
I'm
just trying to understand
So I
what's
just
going on.
have to pause. I realize you guys have hung in there for a long time, but because they requested a continuance
Right.
and they're not here to respond, we typically don't take public comment tonight. You would have to wait till the next
Which is
meeting.
okay. We just
Okay.
came here to witness it.
I'm
and
so sorry that you
participate.
had to
That's
wait
okay.
for the whole meeting. I wasn't aware
Not a
that you were
problem.
here, or
just
I would have
wanted to-
warned
this
you of
is our
that.
first time here. I wanted to know the process. So we just come back next time. Is that how this works?
Yeah, typically, the applicant would be here. We're continuing the public hearing,
Right.
and you'll be able to comment at the next meeting.
Great.
But since they're not here, I'd ask you to wait for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Also be aware, you can send comments to the planning department prior to the next meeting. So
Right.
if there's certain things that you'd like to put in writing and get on the record, feel free to do that
Absolutely.
prior to our next meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is our first time, so I appreciate you being patient with us.
Oh, no, I appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much. All right, we have a motion and a second on the continuance. Continuance is the
I don't
noun.
think you need to worry about it.
These things bother me, Jay. The continuance to December 20th. Any further discussion of that motion? All those in favor? That is 5-0 in favor of continuing that special permit, public hearing.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
How many times can you continue these things? I mean,
Well,
can it go on forever?
the Harvest Way one, I think we continued for 2 years. So we're well within that limit.
So if the applicant requests it, you have to consider his request. If you feel that he has not made fair progress based on the promises he's made you, you could request that he withdraw the application and resubmit when he's ready. When he submitted his application was complete. The problem was the Conservation Commission asked for additional information, and we, the planning board, don't want to grant the earth moving permit till we know what the Conservation Commission's concerns are and restrictions would be on the site because they're restoring a wetland. And they needed to go out and hire the appropriate people to do the wetlands flagging and do the survey that's required for the wetlands delineation. That's been done now. It took a long time. And I have to say, I think they're fortunate to have gotten it done because the weather is going to change very soon and they won't have the ability to see the wetland species. So we'll see what happens. But if you feel that they're not making progress, you can give them the opportunity to withdraw without prejudice. Then obviously the worst case scenario is you deny their request for the earth moving permit. I wouldn't recommend that you do that. But
Is it worth
we
it?
continue the hearing.
Is it worth asking them to come in
You're going to see them on the 20th.
on the 20th?
Yeah,
Okay,
they're going to be back. And they did tell us this when they started, that they needed probably a month or two to complete this work. It's probably been 3 months now.
At least.
Okay, any further? All right. Last, we have a public hearing to modify the commercial component of special permit TOV 2014-1 for Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street. This is also a public hearing, and I have to read the legal notice into the record. This is Town of Westborough Office of the Planning Board notice of public hearing for special permit modification within the Transit-Oriented Village District TOV. Pursuant to the rules and regulations relative to special permits under Section 1330, 2300, 2600, and 5000 of the zoning bylaws of the Town of Westborough and Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, the Westborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on December 6, 2022, at 6:30 p.m. in the Great Hall of the Forbes Municipal Building, 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, on a proposal to modify special permit TOV 2014-1 for Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street, Westborough, Massachusetts. Located in the Transit-Oriented Village District as described under Section 5000 of the zoning bylaws. The proposal includes an increase to the residential component of the project not to exceed a maximum of 18 additional units in consideration of ascending parcel as required under Section 5000 of the zoning bylaws and modification to the project commercial component. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter should appear at the appointed time and location. A copy of the application being considered can be viewed at the office of the Westborough Planning Board, 45 West Main Street, and the Westborough Town Clerk, 34 West Main Street during normal business hours. And that's signed the Westborough Planning Board, and that was in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette on November 19th and November 26th. Jim, I'll give you a minute to preface this, and then we'll...
Sure, just a little bit about the procedure for transit-oriented zoning. So as you know, this project, West Village Commons, was approved with a commercial component. The commercial component was approved with 3 stages. The first building, which is 3,000 square feet, has been constructed. The planning board back in August amended the special permit to allow the applicant to build or not build the remaining 5,000 square feet at his discretion, as opposed to being required to be built before the completion of the last unit. We did that for a couple of reasons. First of all, we recognize that the market conditions for commercial development on that part of town are probably not advantageous at this time. Second of all, it's better to not require the buildings to be built than have them sit vacant for many years, which is what they probably would. Last of all, we did that because the applicant was good enough to complete a water line connection from his property at his expense to Westborough Village for a future water loop. That was in exchange for his discretion to complete the commercial, and we felt at the time that was a good idea. The Transit-Oriented Village zoning requires that if any additional development is for residential purposes at that site is completed, that the applicant would amend the special permit and submit a supplemental parcel under the transfer development rights component of the Transit-Oriented Village zoning in exchange for an increased development at this site. That's the purpose of this hearing. The applicant proposes 18 additional residential units to be transferred from the property at 190 to 212 Oak Street in exchange for a density bonus. Currently, at the Oak Street property, he is proposing 12 units. Those 12 units would be transferred to the Village Commons site with an additional 6 units in exchange for the property at Oak Street being transferred to the town, for ownership by the town, in perpetuity. So the request is that the approved density on Oak Street be transferred to 1 Gleason Street, Village Commons, with an additional 6 residential units. Informally, the board discussed with the applicant over the course of several meetings a couple different scenarios which were presented informally to the board. And now the applicant has proposed a formal amendment to the special permit for the board to consider those 2 scenarios with direction to come from the board to develop 1 scenario to proceed. That's where we are presently. I think it's appropriate that the applicant make his presentation at this time.
Okay, Farouk. Just name and address for the record.
Farouk Ansari, trustee, Village Commons, Realty Trust. I'm here to present to the board on the planning board initiative. We had taken 2 options that we wanted to present. One was all the 18 units, on their own, not one on top of the other, but like townhouse style. And the other option was 15 units in 1 building and 3 townhouses. So I submitted to Jim a architectural rendering, a plan, a concept of the 1 building with 15 and 3 standalone, townhouses. We did not submit another plan for option number 2, where all the townhouses are, on their own. Just no 2 stories or 3 stories, but just one after another. The reason for that is you can take a look at the plan that I submitted. It gives you the flavor for both of them. One for that building that houses 15 units, and the other 3 units give you a flavor of how they would be dispersed throughout the land if we were to go that route. So I'm basically waiting for the marching orders from the planning board as to what direction we should be going, so I can go ahead, get all the plans and then what have you submitted for the next meeting or whenever we can get it ready to take on or go to the next step.
Questions from the board?
Are the flats going to be condoized or are they going to be rented?
They're all going to be condomized. They're all got to be
So they'll
part
be
and parcel of,
owned,
yes.
Okay, so, Farouk, how many studios was it?
I don't have the checklist in front of me, but I think if you look at the plan, it has it all. There are like two studios and maybe 2 or 3 1-bedrooms, and the remainder are 3-bedroom. However, there are 4 affordables in it. There are 4 affordable units in that building, the 15-unit building.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember, I'm trying to figure out how many total bedrooms we're looking at compared to Oak Street. It seems like we're gonna be pretty equivalent, depending on whether you count the study at Oak Street as a 3rd bedroom in those townhouses, which you don't have in these townhouses. I was happy to see. I think the layout of the site looks adequate. I think this is better for the neighborhood than 2 empty commercial buildings. I think the open question might be the title to the Oak Street property, and whether or not we're getting a sending parcel that has as much value as you're representing. And that's what I'm concerned about that, and I would like possibly to get some legal advice on that. Other than that, I think it's a beneficial move for the town. I think we can use that parcel at Oak Street in the future, and I think this zoning and location is more suitable to a denser project like this than the Oak Street location.
My question is, if we add these 18 units, does it delay the current owners of the 16 to take over the association from Farouk?
Well, it'd be a second phase, right? So how does that normally work with phasing? The homeowners association takes control of phase one, right?
Right.
I mean, you're
Yeah,
the real
no,
estate
I'm just
guy,
making sure,
so-
I just want to make sure that they're separated apart, because
Yeah, and of course, they would have a chance to comment on, they've all been notified of this process, and they'd have a chance to come in and comment and give us their opinion. In fact, some of them may be here, I don't know.
But is this a hearing at the moment? I thought it was just a presentation.
Public hearing.
We're in a public hearing.
This is a formal public
All
hearing.
right.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about the parking involved. I mean, we have 15 units plus a commercial building plus 3 townhouses. It's difficult for me to see that there's adequate parking there.
Well, I mean, the point of the transit village is to, I don't want to say discourage vehicular usage, but to make, to allow fewer vehicles because the train station is that close. I think that, the building commissioner would certainly confirm that this would meet the zoning requirements for parking. I think parking on the Oak Street site is more of an issue because there's no possibility for street parking or.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I'm complaining about the project. I mean, I think this is a better use of the project. I'm just saying, realistically looking at this, it just doesn't look to me like there's enough parking to cover this. And consequently, that was my question, and
Well,
something needs
You've
to
got
be looked at.
36 spaces in this parking lot, and then 22 on the driveway, well, really 26 on the driveway. So you've got 2 spaces per unit within the parking lot itself, and then 26 spaces for the commercial use.
Well, not quite two.
What?
overparked. There's plenty of parking.
I think there's
Yeah.
plenty of parking,
Okay.
especially if it's a transit-oriented. I mean, thinking if there's 2 bedrooms in some of these units, and you have a couple,
Yeah, I can't
two-person
imagine.
family, one of them might be living there to go take the train to work in Boston, and then
Yeah, I would think the 10 spaces would be dedicated to the retail building, the 12 spaces would be guest parking, and the 32 in that lot would be resident parking, and that should be plenty.
Okay, it just,
You know,
looking at it.
You have to remember, some of these units are gonna be 1 bedroom and studios, so they're only gonna have 1 car. I think we're probably.
The requirement for commercial is 3.5 per thousand. So he needs 11 spaces.
Okay.
For the commercial building, he's got a parking field with 22.
Farouk, how long would it take you to put up these 18 units and then have the entire location finished?
Excellent question. This one would make life a lot easier than having 18 different side-by-side or townhouse-type units. If just one building alone will house 15 of them. Now, that building has to go up all in its entirety. There is no piecemealing. So the whole building has to go up. They've got to be all completed and be done with it before I can get any occupancy permit. I don't think they issue part, half occupancy permit, half not. It's all one conglomerate building. The other 3 townhouses are attached to, each other. So that also I plan to build as one building.
So basically, there are only 2 buildings there.
So like 2 years, or how long are you talking?
I'm anticipating we should be done, past the approval, of course, within 2 years.
Well, we're gonna want a construction schedule, and there's gonna be we're not gonna have a similar situation that we had where somebody's waiting.
Mark, can I just,
Sure.
we're gonna need a real construction schedule, a Gantt chart, maybe from a
A real what?
contractor. A real construction schedule, not an Excel sheet with dates that you've provided. We need something from
Okay,
maybe a contractor.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have some stringent
absolutely.
requirements as far as occupancy.
We're talking about details, right? Yeah, sure.
So, Jim, is there any way, since these are gonna be condoized and sold, that we can have a release of unit process where none of the units are released to be sold until he comes before us and requests a certain amount of units, and we can confirm that?
Sure,
The
you
work
can
is
do that
done.
any way you want. I would recommend that you phase in the affordables. So if there's 18 units, I mean, he's required to do 4 affordables. You could say for every 4 units, one of them has to be affordable.
Yeah. I'm just
before
trying to
you
avoid,
release the next.
yeah, I'm just trying to avoid the situation where he's selling units to people and then waiting 2 years to construct.
I mean, there's gonna be some conditions on even releasing building permits, I think, because we're gonna wanna make sure the back half of the project is done. I don't wanna wait, I don't want those people waiting 2 years for top coat or for
Yep.
the
Uh,
finished
again,
community house or,
Through the chairman,
go ahead.
the 15-unit building, it's going to be either built or not built. It's got to be 100% complete. And that means that
Yeah, but
all of them will have the
You
occupancy permit,
understand,
except for
though,
those
like,
2.
I don't even want you to start building until you finish the back half of the project.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, they have a community center that those 14 residents, or 16 residents, sorry,
Yeah.
should be able to enjoy for the next 2 years. They shouldn't have to
Yes.
drive over manhole covers and have
The
patio.
only thing that would delay me is, which you probably know because of the weather, is the final paving. That will be done as soon as the weather turns. And by that time, I'll
Sure.
finish up all little things.
Well, obviously, we can't control the weather, but we can control your actions, and
Sure.
I'm not gonna be giving you lot releases or unit releases to start building or to sell, or, there's gonna be strict guidelines here, Farouk,
That's
because
just fine.
I don't want the same performance that we had on the last one. And I think we're gonna have to work hard on those, so that we can protect the neighbors that are already there.
So one thing that the board needs to remember is that he needs to create a pedestrian connection to 11 Gleason Street, which is the Westborough Village project. So whatever design we have here needs to incorporate that connection.
Yeah, it looks like he's got that stairwell at the bottom. I mean, is that, I think is where 11 Gleason
You're
is.
looking at option 2 here, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I can't see it from there. Jim, go ahead.
Through the chairman, I just want to emphasize the fact that this was done in a hurry, in a week's time. So some of the stuff that's shown on that plan that I have now is invalid. For example, there won't be any connection because now it's, residential, and the other part is the commercial part. If they both were commercial, then I think the bylaws require that. Otherwise, you don't need a connection for that. I'm just saying, but I'll have it all in a final plan, all checked out, verified, the whole nine
The
yards.
zoning requires the connection. It's not just the plan, Farouk. Your plan shows the connection, and in order for you to get this amendment under the zoning, you still have to provide a connection. It's not just the approval under the permit, it's in the zoning. The connection between the parcels is part of the zoning.
I don't know, but I don't know why you would want to have
residential
okay,
thing
but
connected to a
Farouk-
commercial thing, but if that's
Farouk,
what the
let's get
zoning
some-
calls for.
All right, let's get some official site plans.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, then we can talk about it.
If you can convince the board that it's not necessary, then you can request a waiver on that, right?
Yes, I did.
But there is still a commercial building there, and we would like interaction between the communities there, from a pedestrian standpoint. So I have to figure out exactly how that's gonna work if there's no
I'll have a plan submitted.
All right, based on what we have, I think you should move forward.
Okay.
We don't really have enough detail on this to.
No, we don't. I wasn't expecting to present that detail tonight.
Sure, but I think it's a good start. It gives a chance for the neighbors to
Yeah.
understand
So
what
you're okay with the plan? Is that what I'm hearing? The one I submitted with 15
Well,
units?
again, there's
and-
open
and
issues.
three?
I need to understand the title and ownership and, everything else on the sending parcel that we're getting. There's definitely open issues, right? And I need to hear from the public. But for now, I don't have any other questions. Jim, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
do. So you just brought up the ownership. So at 190 to 210, or 212 rather, Oak Street, we need a free and clear title. Because this project can't go forward till you produce a free and clear title for that entire parcel. I asked you for that.
Yes, you did. My comment on that one is, there are two banks that are involved. One in Hannah Place, I have a mortgage on it, and the other one is Village Commons. Majority of the mortgage has been paid off because all the units have been sold, but there is some mortgage on the commercial side of it. I talked to the people that own the mortgage on Hannah to see if they're willing to transfer my loan from there to here, because I won't need that anymore. And they said, we'll do that once you have a real approval of that plan. Before that, we cannot commit to it. So I said, I'm working on it. And after tonight, I can tell them that it's moving in the positive direction.
So when you got the mortgage on Oak Street, right?
Yes, I do have a mortgage on Oak Street.
They did a title search on that?
Yes. We have a clear title.
What's that?
So you can give me the title then.
I
I'm
can give you the
concerned
title.
about the ownership of the former right-of-way of Oak Street, that you have clear title to that.
Yes.
Because the entrance of that property onto Route 135, Milk Street, was under the authority of the state, the county commissioners. They need to extinguish the state's right to that intersection. So I need to know that the property that you show on Oak Street, you own the entirety of it, not just a portion of it. You own the entirety of it. And I need to see that on a plan with a legal description of that, because otherwise you can't prove the density that you have on that site.
We purchased whatever was auctioned by the state. So it's not like I created my own lot. Whatever they auctioned off, we bought it. So
Yes,
it is what it
give me
is.
the title.
So,
All right.
It shouldn't be this difficult.
This is getting a little beyond my
Right.
expertise, and I think we might have to you might have to get an attorney involved just to
no problem.
sort that out.
Yes,
But I understand what Jim's asking for, and we'll need to see that, because
yes.
I don't want to,
No problem.
I don't want to take a parcel as a sending parcel unless we're clear that we have title to it.
Well,
that
particularly
would make
since
a
it
lot
was
of
bought
sense.
at auction, and that does raise some questions, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, you probably understand this more than anyone, but either way, I think our town council will want to get involved, or will want to get them involved on it, just to make sure that we're not taking a parcel that's encumbered and giving you rights to do something somewhere else.
Yes.
All right, it's a public hearing. I don't hear anything else from the board at this time, so is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this? Sir, come up and state your name and address, and please ask your question.
My name is Arvind, and my neighbors and I represent the people who live in that community, Dania Drive. I apologize for my previous appearance.
So
I thought
Arvind,
this was
I'm
for
sorry,
this.
could you give us your address too?
Sure, 11 Dania Drive. That's the property behind what we're
Right,
discussing
I
right
know
now.
where it is, yeah.
And all of my friends represent people from that community, so there are about 8 families that are here.
Did you all sign in? We had a sign-in sheet. I'd love to get you guys to sign in.
Absolutely.
Just so we can,
Take care of that.
it's more so we, and you can distribute that later. I don't need you to do it now, but I just, I do want to hear your question. I just would also like to know who was here so we can communicate with you.
Absolutely.
Is there is there room for email and stuff on that sign-in sheet?
I see address, I don't see email, but
Maybe we could get at least your email, Arvin,
Absolutely.
if you're going to be the spokesperson, so we can
Yes.
communicate with you. All right, that being said, could you go
Thank
ahead and
And I
finish your
apologize,
thought?
I thought the previous issue was this, so I made an appearance, I apologize for that.
No, that's-
Thank you for listening to us. As far as this new modification that's going to happen or is being talked about, I'd just like to say that our community is still in flux. The construction is still happening. There's a porta potty right in front of my house, which obviously has its own issues. There's a sand sifter that whenever it works, my entire house shakes. All of us have dealt with the repercussions of construction, and we're still dealing with it. The thought that this will continue for another 2 to 3 years scares us beyond belief. And the fact that the two plans that we came by just because one of our colleagues went through these minutes and noticed there are 18 units being planned scares us because we honestly feel like there's not enough room for those. Plus the road that leads out to I forget the name of the road, Parkway. It's not wide enough currently where even today, the 15 of us, when we try to get out, we wait another 2 to 3 minutes before we can make it out. Now with 18 units, it's going to be a bigger challenge, plus the construction, plus we lose a lot of greenery which is there right now.
Okay.
And we lose what was supposed to be like at least part of it dedicated to children and playing. Each unit here has 2 children, so we have 30
So,
kids in the
Can I
community.
just point something out though, Arvin? Currently, the permit would allow for, he's got 1 commercial building there.
Correct.
It would allow for 2 more commercial buildings,
Correct,
right?
right.
What we're proposing is that these residential units take the place of those commercial buildings. I'm just struggling to see which you would prefer.
Which is a
would be
valid point.
2 more commercial buildings there would.
I agree
and
with you.
That could
And-
take,
Yes, sir.
multiple
I agree with
years.
what you're saying. Swapping a residential for commercial will make sense as long as the footprint is identical. But from our preliminary analysis, we noticed that the footprint is not identical, at least from what we noticed. We haven't been informed about this. It's our uneducated analysis of what we had before versus what's being proposed right now. We feel like the square footage is a lot bigger, and we lose greenery and parking spots. And I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it. What I'm saying is we need some more time to discuss it with
yeah,
everybody.
this is very preliminary. We're going to get very detailed plans, and I think you heard me say that we're going to put some pretty stringent requirements in to make sure that your section is completed. There won't be, porta potties sitting in front of your door, and you'll be able to enjoy your homes as your homes with as minimal disruption as possible. But I personally would rather have residential neighbors there, but I don't live there, so this is why we want you to come in and comment on that.
Absolutely. And you're right in saying that residential swapped out for commercial makes a lot of sense from our livability standpoint. We are just really concerned about the number of units, which would increase just the density, population density there, the existing green area and the parking spots we would lose, and the compromise in terms of safety that we would be giving up for the next 3 years. Because, like I said, there are 30 children in the community who would now have to be constantly guarded from not going to that area, which they go to today because there's a huge green patch there, and that's the only safe area where kids can play right now. And we would be losing that, not only to construction, but even after the project is done, we would lose it to parking spots. So there'd be no greenery there. So I'm not saying I'm unequivocally opposed to this idea. What we're saying is we'd like a conversation where our needs are also heard, and a compromise is reached upon where we're both happy with what's happening, because at the end of the day, no one but us will be living there. So we will be living there through the next 3 years when this is happening. So that's a huge compromise in terms of quality of life that we will unfortunately have to go through. So we'd rather at least get some of our points heard, so that way things are a little more amicable.
Thank you. I completely agree with you. We have every intention of listening to the neighbors.
So,
yeah, you mentioned about, okay, I'm Prabhat Pradhan, 4 Daniel Drive.
Name?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Prabhat, yeah. So you mentioned about, right, replacing 2 commercial with 18 units, right? So I think Jim mentioned about the remaining 2 commercial were 5,000 square feet. Now, instead of 5,000 square feet, you are building 18 into I don't know how many square feet. In 1,000 also it is 18,000 square feet. Plus, if you see this area is greenery area, and that area was kind of separation between commercial and residential. Now that green area is whole becoming into a parking spot. And we got all these things just over the weekend, because we were also not aware of this is something going on. But somewhere we got this one. So this is going to green area is going to be completely parking area. And this is my house, this is my driveway, this is my garage. So when I try to get from my garage, there will be 20 different cars. So 18 houses is total, let's say 36 cars, up to 36 cars. So 36, and we are already 15 member over here. So total will be 30 and 36, 66 cars actually. Up to 66 cars plus their guest also. If you accept for a tiny area, 66 cars to go out, we have to wait 30 minutes at least in that area. And there could be more chances of accident also. So that's why as I mentioned, we are not opposing residential, because we were planning also because there will be one commercial area still also. So that's why we need to just see what is a real ideal amount of units you can build over there, and without losing this green area, because there is no green area in this community, very rare. So this green area we cannot lose this one. Plus we need guest parking also.
that was gonna be parking anyway, that's not gonna be preserved green area, right?
It's like an
I'd
island.
have to look at it.
It's like an island with parking spots on either side. That's literally the only green area we have right now for
Right,
children. to
I
play.
guess what I'm just saying is,
Yeah, I'd have to
you're
look at
using
the-
it as green area now, but I don't know if that's what it would remain. So I don't know if we can say, yeah, you're losing it because you kind of have it temporarily as it is. And then I just wanted to make a point, if through the chair, on the cars. It's what you presented sounds awful. That's also the absolutely worst case scenario. I don't think you're going to have 66 cars and their guests and all that all at once. I mean, this is a transit-oriented development. The intent of it is to have it as dense housing so that people can use the transit station to get to work, and you don't have, while you may have those cars parked, they're not driving around all the time. That's the intent.
We just extrapolated based on the current residents' car.
Completely understand, but I'm just saying, all the cars all at once with their guests
Yeah.
never happens.
So the other thing, these are going to be smaller units,
Right.
right? They're not as big as yours, so there won't be as many cars. I mean, I guess there'll be two more units, but
Just to give you a clear idea, none of us take the commuter rail. I'm just being very honest with you. Not a single resident today takes the commuter rail.
And that's your right. What the design of this whole area is so that people who want to take the commuter rail don't have to have a car. So that's kind of the intent.
The wait time is when the train is arriving or departing, right? And you guys are trying to leave for work in the morning, right? Because most of the traffic happens.
No. We're just talking, people who come in from that Toll Brothers community. And this is during rush hour. Everybody gets up during rush hour or
Yeah.
the evening time when we're picking up kids. And that brings up another point where currently the children do walk on the road when they get off the school bus, which is another big concern. And with the construction happening right at the mouth of our property, that will be another big concern where when kids get off the school bus.
we need to find a way to accommodate you on these, but all of these concerns would be this, well, I don't want to say all of them, but all of them could be concerns if he built a commercial building. You could still have 36 additional cars, and you could still have construction, and you could still have that green space go away. So I don't disagree with your concerns, and we need to find a way to make sure those are addressed while he's building. But I don't necessarily think they're exclusive to this proposal. I think there's potential that they could be an issue regardless of what's built there.
I think the issue with the green space is actually, the green space is supposed to be around their houses, and right now it's mud around their houses. So all the kids are forced to go play in another area. They're not actually allowed to use their yard that they purchased. So that's the issue, is that the grass and the 16 homes aren't completely developed with the landscaping and the grass, so the kids aren't hanging in the commercial area.
And we're proposing that, that all be done before he even starts this.
I agree,
Yeah.
but that's clearly what issue you're having right now, is that your yards are not finished.
Right, in the design review where we were out there 2 weeks ago, and the area which is at the end, the far end, will be turned into a green area that kids can play on. Now,
Yeah.
when that gets done and how quickly it gets done probably is how quickly your homeowners association gets set up and how you can move forward with the builder is still responsible for doing certain things. But in order for you to develop that as a children's area and playground and so forth, it's your homeowners association that's going to be doing that development. So it's as quick as you can get that off the ground and then begin to develop that space. Then you won't have to worry about the kids out in front where the construction is going on, if there is construction, or out in that parking lot.
Yeah, so what we need from you is to kind of catalog or give us a list of these concerns so that we can address them in our decision and make them requirements as best we can. So, so don't, please keep coming and please keep telling us, but, if you could put together that list as we go, and we've got Kristen keeping track of that too, so. We want to make sure we address these as we move this forward. We're very early in this process.
I understand, and thank you. And like I said, we'd love for the conversation to continue between all three parties, because we don't want this to be a situation where we got blindsided. We felt that way because we weren't even aware of this happening, unfortunately, until someone told us that there's something happening at our address, and we all just scrambled, and this was just 2 days ago.
So you should have gotten a legal notice in the mail.
None of us
No,
did.
we haven't got that one.
None of us did, unfortunately, which kind of put us on the edge. Yeah, it
Well,
just kind of put us on the
just,
edge here.
Well, that's concerning to me, because you are supposed to get a legal notice by mail, and I don't know why that wouldn't have happened.
And
but I'm
the
glad you
red line
came
was just
in.
me. None of us did,
Yeah,
which is what.
So you have to understand, the board, we're an elected board, we're here to represent the taxpayers, and you are now taxpayers as of last time I checked, so, we're not here to make things easy for the builder, we're here to represent the taxpayers, and we're gonna do that as best we can. But it's not just your 16 homes that we represent, it's the whole town. And
Absolutely.
we're just, we're trying to make decisions that are best for the whole town. And still listen to what you're trying to tell us and hopefully solve those issues for you.
Absolutely, and we understand the builder's predicament where there's a parcel of land that's just sitting out there, and there's a commercial property that unfortunately due to COVID, it didn't turn out the way it should. So we understand everybody's situation here, we just would like an equal seat at the table.
Well,
That's
you
all we're
do.
saying.
You have that, absolutely.
Yeah, let me just ask a point of information, Jim, when the public notices go out, the list of homeowners, are they gotten from the assessor's records?
Yes. The
Okay,
voters
I'll-
list is generated
The
by the
problem
assessors.
is then, because I happen to have looked at the assessor's records for these particular units, is that the deeds have not cleared, and therefore the mail would not be going to your addresses because you're not listed as owners on the assessment records. So if you take a look at that, you will see,
So you're saying the association, which is Farouk, is what's listed?
most of the time, yeah. So if you just look at the assessor's records, the deeds have not come up on the assessor's records, and this is the reason
So
we
Farouk,
did not get the notification.
as a courtesy, please deliver the notice to all your homeowners, along with your 2 concept plans and the elevations that you submitted to the board.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to us. Look forward to having more of these conversations.
Yeah, there's only about
Coming.
6 or
Thank you.
so owners that are actually listed. Everything else is still under the Ansari Trust, Village Commons
Is
Trust.
that an assessor issue or a?
Well, it takes a little while for the,
But it should not have taken this long.
well, it depends on when the closings were.
They've been for a long
A
time.
long time, so I don't know why those deeds have cleared up.
The most recent recorded deed in here is from February of '22. So anybody who closed after that probably doesn't have their name listed as the owner on the, don't worry, you'll get your tax bill. But, yeah, it does take a little while for the assessor records to catch up to that,
Yeah,
which may
sure.
explain why those mailings didn't get addressed to you as the owner.
That
Um,
makes sense. That makes sense.
I can check in with John Steinberg, the town assessor, and ask him some more details on that.
There are a number of things on that need to be looked at.
Okay. All right. I see, Farouk, just one more second. We had other people up here who wanted, I don't know if,
Yeah, I think that sums up all the concerns. Thank you
okay.
so much.
Thank you
Okay.
for coming.
Farouk, did you have a response?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you have a response or a comment?
All diligent efforts will be made not to disrupt their lives as a result of construction vehicles. I have thought about a great plan to address that, which I don't want to talk about it now, but it will be shown on the plan we submit to
Okay.
you. This gentleman that just spoke to you had already voiced those concerns to me 2 or 3 days ago. In response to that, I had text messages sent out to all the 15 residents that I was available and willing to meet with them before this meeting so that I can show them what I'm doing and it doesn't look like we're undercutting anybody. So I was ready to do that. So all the emails did go out, but there was just no interest at all to get together, to go, those plans that Jim is talking about, those were the ones I wanted to show them, so.
Well, they
But I
seem-
will now.
They seem pretty interested now,
Yes,
Farouk, so
and
let's,
I'll take care of it, no problem.
let's
We have
not-
excellent relationship with most all of them.
yeah, so let's not look backward, let's look forward
Yeah.
and make sure that we're keeping the residents who already live there in the loop on every step of this process.
Yes, I will.
You know, at every meeting, we're going to announce when the next meeting is, so that if you're here, you can also watch it on westboroughtv.com if you can't physically make it down here. All the meetings are televised and available on demand. So I would encourage you, you can go back and watch yourself later if you want. What else? Anything else? All right, I think we have a,
Just to be clear,
Go
just so I'm clear.
Yeah.
So Farouk, you're going to develop the 15-unit building with the 3 townhouses attached further. You're
Yes.
going to start showing site plan, access, grading, drainage, utilities. And the other thing too is we need to make sure that Department of Public Works can deliver that sewer. So I know Lisa's heard that from me before.
right,
It's not a new thing.
and then we need the title.
The title is key.
Yeah.
Because Farouk, I can't impress enough this on you. You're getting a 12-unit transfer and a bonus of 6 units on top of that. We need to know that you have clear title to that property.
I will send you a copy of the title tomorrow. Or when you wake up tonight, tomorrow morning, it'll be there.
Okay.
Okay,
That's good.
So, I think we've spent enough time on this now because we need more details, and you're gonna start working on providing those.
All set? No.
Okay. Any other issues? I don't see anything else from the public, so we're gonna continue this. Do we have a motion?
Will you be ready for the 20th with more advanced designs? Will you be ready to make progress on December 20?
Well, why don't we move, why don't we,
Right?
yeah.
Yes.
Why don't we continue it to the 20th, and if
Yes,
you're not ready, you
The
can
DPW can
request,
vote it
you
out.
can
Thank
request
you.
another continuance. I don't have a motion.
Can we just have proper notice if you are gonna continue, so the homeowners don't have to show up to the meeting? That's fair enough.
I didn't hear what you said.
I just said,
So, so
we-
Farouk, you need to have any documentation into us by the Thursday before the 20th. So
I'll-
if you don't, if you, and I know that gives you less time, but if you can't do that, let us know by that Thursday
Got it.
so that we can notify anyone who was interested in that meeting that they don't have to come, because I don't want these gentlemen coming down here if we're not actually going to accomplish anything on the
I'll keep
20th.
them informed, yes.
Good point, Pete. Thank you. All right.
Would you like a
Go
motion?
ahead. Yes, please.
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing to modify special permit TOV 2014-1 for Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street to Tuesday, December 20th, 2022, at 6:30 PM as requested by the applicant.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of that continuance?
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
5-0.
Thank you very much.
Here, I use continuance. I'm gonna make myself laugh. All right, we have meeting minutes.
I haven't had a chance to review the latest ones.
Okay, let's table that for the next meeting, if that's, any other business, Jim?
No further business, except to remind you, town meeting, 9 AM Saturday morning at the high school. I will post a pre-meeting for anyone that wishes to come earlier for 8:30. So from 8:30 on, the meeting will be open.
Yeah,
Question.
We won't be there long enough. Go ahead.
They're gonna have childcare?
Yes.
Great question.
I saw somebody post online that there
Oh,
will be
there is.
childcare
I
available.
don't know about that, so.
so based on my schedule, I might have to sneak out at 10. Just I have a conflict,
Okay,
but that might change. I just got another email, so.
okay, that's, I mean, if you can't stay, you can't stay, that's fine, and we'll still have quorum.
John, you can
No, I just
confirm
wanted-
childcare
yeah.
at the clerk's office.
Having 4
I believe they have Girl Scouts
Okay.
providing
On
childcare,
Saturday.
but, that's what they've done in the past, and I did read that there would be childcare available. But, right, the town clerk would know, or
Yep. town
John,
clerk.
John Arnold would know, but town clerk will know. All right, if there's no other business, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? I heard John seconded, I
Oh, fine.
think. All right.
Sorry, Hazel.
All those in favor? That is 5-0. Have a great night. See you Saturday.